evening, and welcome to the monthly regular meeting part of the Rossmoor Community Services District. Can we call a roll?
Director Barkey?
Here.
Director Ciros?
Here.
Director DeMarco?
Here.
And Vice Chair Nidickman.
Here.
We have an absence tonight of our president. It's an excused absence. He's away on an event.
Would you all please stand for the pledge? Yep. Pledge allegiance to the flag. A couple of presentations tonight. Our agenda reflects 4, but a couple short. But let's start off with Captain Knudsen. Give us our quarterly crime statistics.
Okay, good evening. Are we on? Hello?
There you go.
Okay. I actually have, in addition to the quarterly, I have the year end from 2021. I didn't get a chance to do yet because I've been off work rehabilitating from a little injury. So I want to do that, get us kind of caught up, and then we'll transition into the quarterly report for the first part of this year. So for 2021, one thing that was noteworthy that happened is the Department of Justice Federal Bureau of Investigation transition from the uniform crime reporting system, which is what we've used for the past probably 50 years to record and document crime trends, and they changed the system from the UCR system, which is your Part 1 and Part 2 crimes, and we usually report on the Part 1 crimes. Those are the more significant incidents. So they changed the reporting program. It's now called the Uniform Crime Report National Incident-Based Reporting System, or NIBRS, and there's a different set of requirements. It actually is a little more kind of finite type information. There's a lot more subcategories in this particular system. So all of the statistics I'm going to report are going to be based off that. They are preliminary still at this time because the information hasn't been certified by the Department of Justice yet. There's a whole process they have to do to validate all the statistics. So that's what this information is based on. On the page you have up, actually this is the first quarter, so I don't know if you guys have this report or not, the annual report. If you want, I can go to the quarterly report. We can come back to it if it's easier for the staff.
Go.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't get a chance to copy them. We just put it on the screen.
Okay. There we go. That's the one I'm on right now. Thank you. Okay, so that page talks about the uniform crime reporting in the NIBRS system, which I just talked about, and the transition that all law enforcement nationwide had to do during the past year. So on the next page, you have the 2 charts. It's basically a comparison between 2020 and 2021. Really bottom line, the top chart is 2021. To kind of look at some of the different crime classifications, so the residential burglaries, we showed an increase of +6 incidents. Our vehicle burglaries, so burglaries from a vehicle, were down 1. We had 25. The grand theft, which is your 487, had a total of 46 incidents. That was +23 from 2020. And the vast majority of those were going to be your catalytic converter thefts, which is a crime that has pretty much plagued all of Southern California. So you see a pretty big increase in that. For your petty thefts, we had 27 recorded incidents. That was down 16. And the stolen vehicles, we had 16 reported incidents, which was down 1 from last year. The total number of these Part 1 type crimes was 134, so it was an increase of 11 reported incidents from 2020 for the 2021 year. If we go ahead and go to the next page, then you can see just the calls for service breakdown by month, again comparing 2020 and 2021. October, November, and December were our busiest months with calls for service. And we ended up the year with 2,564 calls for service in comparison to 2,411 the previous year. So increase of a couple hundred calls for service. And then the next page is your basically just a bar graph that kind of covers that information on the chart that had all the different numbers. And so you can kind of see it, in a photographic representation. You can really see the grand thefts were elevated quite a bit. Again, primarily due to just your catalytic converter thefts. The next page is just like a heat map of where the incidents occurred, and it's hard to, with this size community to really get like real hot spots. You can see that the incidents are fairly well dispersed. The key for what incidents are what, I know it's kind of hard to read, but it's representative of those incidents that are reported in the graph or the chart on the first or section page. Any questions on that so far from the board? Good.
Thank you for providing
Sure.
this. This is great.
Yeah, you can see I wish I could provide some information like, hey, why this area has some incidents, but most of the time I think these are just, crimes of opportunity for the folks that are coming in and they're looking for a certain thing and they take advantage of the situation.
Captain, the calls for service, are those all 911 calls, or could they also be calls that are non-emergency calls?
That's any call. So that is calls for service where we're dispatched, emergency, non-emergency, and then any initiated activity by the deputies. So a traffic stop, that stuff would be also in those numbers. And if you go ahead and go to the next page, you can see the catalytic converter thefts, the locations of those, department-wide, and also with the majority of the law enforcement agencies in Orange County. We saw a drastic increase in that. There is now current legislation going through the legal system to increase the penalties for that, and then make just the mere possession of a catalytic converter off of a vehicle a crime in and of itself. So right now the problem we have with the catalytic converter thefts is they're really hard to trace back to a victim vehicle. So that's why it's one of those crimes that's really taken off because of the ease to commit it.
Captain,
Yes, sir.
do you have any idea how this compares to a Los Alamitos or El Dorado area or Seal Beach area?
I don't have their information. I can say that also I provide the law enforcement service for the city of Villa Park, which is a little over twice the size of Rossmoor, and it's about the same as far as the number of incidents per the residents. Yeah. It's like I said, it's kind of all over the place. It really is. This type of crime is happening. So. And then on the last page is just kind of a public service announcement, just a reminder to the community, and it has to do with some crime prevention things, and it disappeared. And that's just the 9 p.m. routine, we call it. And at 9 p.m., hey, we want to make sure, our cars are locked, our house is locked up, any valuables in our cars have been, secured, concealed, brought into the house, make sure our lighting is on, and that type of stuff, just to help prevent us becoming victims. And then in reference specifically to the catalytic converter thefts, whenever possible, if you can park your vehicle in your garage, I know that's a challenge. Sometimes I am garage challenged myself. I don't have the ability to park my cars in the garage. I wish I could.
Or back the car into the driveway, is that helpful as well?
I don't think that really makes a difference for the catalytic converter theft, because really it only takes, less than a minute for them to crawl under your car with a reciprocating saw, cut those things off, and they're out of there. So having the lights, motion lights, that type of stuff, camera system is really helpful. At least on the, the motion lights will help prevent it because they don't want to be, illuminated. And then the video camera surveillance systems helps us on the back end to help investigate the crime. There's also a system out there I was talking to Joe Mendoza about. It's called Flock, F-L-O-C-K. It's a surveillance type camera system. It's basically a automatic license plate reader. There's another system called Vigilant that are both really, efficient. Los Alamitos and Seal Beach each have one of the other systems.
This is for law enforcement?
Yeah. A lot of communities are purchasing them and installing them. That's the only reason I bring it up. We did have an incident here in Rossmoor, a couple weeks ago, a residential burglary, and we were fortunate enough to catch the vehicle leaving the community on Los Alamitos' camera system. So now we have at least an investigative lead to go try to track these people down. So it's an interesting system. If you get a chance, maybe go online and check it out, F-L-O-C-K. And the other one is called Vigilant. They're both, serve that purpose. So
Where do you put these cameras at the entrance and exits to the community?
yeah.
And so
For example, like I said, City of Stanton, that's in our patrol division up here also. The city purchased a whole bunch of them, and they have them at the, major intersections and whatnot. So if a vehicle is stolen or used in a crime and has a, DMV, a DOJ hit on it, it pops up on that system, and it'll actually send an alert to our patrol vehicles. Hey, this vehicle was just seen at this intersection 10 minutes ago.
only accessible by law enforcement?
Correct. Yeah, so it's pretty handy. Check it out, see what you think, So that's it for the annual report. Any questions on that information?
Have any questions? Nope. Thank
You're welcome.
you. The more recent.
Yeah, now we'll go to the first quarter of this year and talk about kind of what's going on and there we go. And I think that's page 2, actually. That's page 3, yeah. There should be one with the two charts. Oh, we're going backwards. There we go. Okay, so this is, again, the first 3 months of the year. Most noteworthy is our stolen vehicles. If you look at the last column, last row on the top chart, you'll see that 10851, that's the vehicle code for stolen vehicle. January we had 2, February 4, March 4. If you look down at last year, we had 3 in the first part of the year, or 0 for the first 3 months of the year. So again, that's definitely something that we're addressing, trying to have the deputies in here patrolling, looking for that. But again, that's a crime of opportunity. We had some incidents where the vehicles were stolen, had the keys in the vehicle, or were unlocked. So fortunately, it was a little too easy for the suspects in those incidents.
Captain, you mentioned having the deputies patrol in here and so forth. What should be the citizens of Rossmoor expectation as far as how often deputies are supposed to be in the neighborhood patrolling and so forth? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously when we call, and I realize you have other non-incorporateds that they're responsible for, but what is the expectation for deputies being in Rossmoor?
Yeah, I think the expectation for me, Rossmoor is a unique community. It's one of the 3 areas on this side of the county, one of the 3 beats. So we have Rossmoor, Anaheim, and Midway City. So those 3 patrol areas work together. The expectation is that they're supposed to be responsive to their patrol area. the reality is that, you know, the car that patrols Rossmoor is also responsible to provide backup assistance to the car that's in Anaheim, at, say, Gilbert and Ball, also
But
Midway
assuming
City.
that there isn't anything going on in Anaheim, that all's quiet,
Right.
is there supposed to be a deputy that's just patrolling this neighborhood?
They should be in the neighborhood, or at least, you know, reasonably close. You know, this is, again, it's a pretty small neighborhood. You know, to be, you know, doing hot laps around, you know, for 12 hours. But, you know, the expectation and what's been communicated to them from me and the sergeants is that, you know, if you're assigned to the Rossmoor area or you're assigned to the Anaheim area, that you're in your area and you're being, you know, responsive to what's going on there and being proactive in patrolling the area
Same
as
thing
much
at
as
night,
possible.
Same thing at night.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So.
Is there anything that Rossmoor can do to provide a more welcoming, not that we're not, but a more welcoming environment for the deputies to come into our community?
Well, I think they feel pretty welcome here. I mean, you know, everyone's always friendly to us, and I think a lot of the deputies stop and talk to the residents throughout the, you know, the day or the early evening when they're here and people are out and about. They try to, you know, engage with the community, and, you know, for the most part, people are very welcoming. So, you know, I don't know that there's really anything else that we can do at this point, you know, to, you know, keep them, you know, sequestered here, you know. Yeah. So, again, the directive from me, again, and this goes to, you know, not only the deputies assigned to Rossmoor, the deputies that work for me that are responsible for unincorporated Santa Ana, Tustin, you know, Orange, is that, hey, they have a beat area. That's their assigned patrol areas. They need to be responsive to it, and they need to be spending the majority of their time in there. Now, how that plays out is different for each side of the county, each area, depending on call volume, day of the week, you know, what type of activity is happening.
Yeah.
So that's January, February, March. Again, we're definitely, you know, seeing an increase in those vehicle thefts. So just want to remind folks to, you know, lock your vehicles, don't keep your keys in them. Whenever possible, park them in the driveway, get some type of lighting, you know, camera system, all that stuff helps out. And then the next couple pages, we have January is a breakdown of calls, some of the incidents. January, the 3 grand thefts. You know, you see the tailgate stolen from the truck. It's like, I've been doing this for 27 years, and I still scratch my head like, okay, who steals a tailgate off a truck? You know, but those things happen. You know, again, tires taken off the vehicle. Maybe they had nice rims or something. Again, the catalytic converter, that type of stuff. The 2 vehicle burglaries. So, you know, these were incidents where there was obviously property that was visible to the suspects, and they were walking around, and they did basically a smash and grab like you would see at a store, and took the property out of there. So. A fraud incident at the gas station, card skimming device, 3 vandalism reports, a domestic violence incident, and then the 2 stolen vehicle incidents. And then for February, the 2 grand thefts, vehicle ransacked, catalytic converter again, 3 petty thefts, again, miscellaneous items, you know. The second one on their Los Alamitos, $3,000 worth of items in the vehicle. You know, we just need to get in the habit of not leaving valuables, probably a laptop or iPad or something like that, in our vehicles, because those are going to get taken. The big one down there in Inverness, again, a vehicle burglary. This was miscellaneous items and then some jewelry that was in the vehicle and electronics. That's a high value loss. So again, just keeping those items out of our vehicles. Vandalism, a narcotics violation, that was a result of a traffic stop by the deputy, and then,
It's a controlled substance, do you know?
you know, I don't know exactly what it was, off the top of my head, yeah. And then, the 4 stolen vehicles. You can see the third one down there, keys were in the vehicle, so. And then for March, the 1 grand theft, miscellaneous items stolen from a person. And we had 2 petty thefts, package theft and a bicycle. And then the, looks like 6 burglaries, miscellaneous items from the garage. You know, if you leave your garage open with, you have high value, you know, bicycles or whatnot in there, you know, you're making yourself an easy target. So we want to try to prevent that. We did have 2 domestic violence-related incidents, and then an assault with a deadly weapon type incident over here at the restaurant and bar on Los Alamitos. And that's it for the, oh, correct, take that back. The last second page there for March, again, the 4 stolen vehicles, 3 vandalisms, and another narcotics arrest violation. So the stolen vehicles definitely is, you know, an issue that is, you know, troubling, so we're going to work on addressing that as much as possible. Sometimes it's things we get spikes for whatever reason, so. But any questions on that as far as the crime incidents? Sir?
Question from the audience.
Actually, can I ask first, if you want to come up, Nia, you can come up to the mic and so Captain, I noticed Los Alamitos had an etching program for our catalytic converters. Does the Sheriff's Department have anything similar that they're doing?
We don't have anything like that at the moment, especially in our unincorporated areas. I know some of our contract cities in South County have had some of the, you know, automotive shops and whatnot down there volunteer to do it. We don't really have that up here. We don't have that type of, you know, commercial, you know, businesses around that do a bunch of that stuff. So I would encourage folks, if they can take advantage of something like that, you can even have your mechanic do it, you know. So, and there are devices you can order online to, you know, help secure your catalytic converter. It's kind of like a clamp that you can attach, bolt, or weld on there that makes this type of crime a little more difficult to accomplish.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Are we doing questions from the
Come
audience?
to the mic. Yes?
We'll let Ms.
Sure.
Hardman come
Okay,
to the
she
mic.
just come to the mic for a second.
As an owner of electric vehicles, and a lot more people are buying electric vehicles, I know they're immune to catalytic converter theft, but are you seeing any difference in the amount of cars that are stolen? Are electric cars as likely to get stolen or burgled or broken into than regular cars?
Yeah, I haven't noticed any increase as far as vehicle theft for electric vehicles. Again, the burglaries or theft from a vehicle, I think that's regardless of what type of vehicle is it, whether it's combustion or electronic or, you know, fuel cell or whatever. That doesn't matter. If we're you know, leaving property in the vehicle that folks can see that have ill intentions, they're going to break the window out or open the door and take the property. So.
You said these clamps for the catalytic converters, you think that they do work to some extent?
Yeah, I think it definitely makes it a little more difficult for, you know, the suspects that are doing this, because they want the easy, quick, how fast can I get under the car, cut the catalytic converter and take off. If they slide under their car and see that it's, you know, fortified, for lack of a better term, they may just move on to another car. It doesn't mean it's going to prevent, you know, the victim 4 houses down, but maybe your driveway's safe because you have the, you know, protective measures taken.
That's the thing with the inscribing the number, is that only helps after the fact, unless you do it in really large numbers right where they happen to be looking as they're trying to
Yeah,
steal.
it's definitely not preventative. The part of the issue with the catalytic converter thefts is quite often we pull vehicles over that have, you know, individuals in it that have 5 or 6 catalytic converters, saws and equipment in the back of their car, and we know that it's stolen, but we don't have any way to prove it because we can't identify a victim. We can't take it to the district attorney and say, hey, we know for a fact this is stolen property. So, what usually happens is they get taken for safekeeping, and a report gets written, and unfortunately it kind of ends at that because there's no way to link it to an actual theft.
What is the penalty for if you were to see a catalytic converter stolen, if a deputy sees it being stolen and the person is apprehended? What is the penalty?
Well, the penalty would be depending on the value of the catalytic converter. So, if it's
Over $950?
over $950, then it's going to be a felony. So, a year up to more than a year in jail.
The hope is if
Technically,
enough
sorry.
people etch in the number, we can catch some of these guys, take them off the street, and reduce the number in the long.
Yeah, and we've been able to do that in a few incidents. But yeah, that would help. It helps with the back end as far as the investigation. And then again, also any type of, surveillance camera that can put that person underneath the car committing the crime, and we can kind of link it all together and build the case, to have the evidence to take to the district attorney, and then the district attorney will, file the charges. So.
Is the DA filing charges on things being stolen over $950?
Yeah, I think our district attorney in Orange County, we're pretty fortunate. They're pretty assertive in their filings with those types of things. I know that, and I don't want to, speak on their behalf, but I think their, objective is to, prosecute to the intent and letter of the law that's out there, and do that. I think they're doing a pretty good job of holding true to that. So, I think we're pretty fortunate in Orange County that we have a district attorney that's, supportive of protecting our victims by, taking prosecutorial steps against the suspects. So, yeah, we're
And
fortunate.
that goes with stolen vehicles as well. So if a vehicle stolen, you apprehend the person, RDA, I mean, again, the ones that you apprehend, they get prosecuted, because there's other counties that don't prosecute. It's a cite and release.
Yeah.
That's not happening here.
Based on my experience, like I said, in Orange County, the district attorney is prosecuting for that. They're pretty conservative in their approach as far as like, hey, there was a victim, we apprehended a suspect. If we have sufficient evidence for them to push forward a case, they're gonna prosecute for it. So we're pretty fortunate in that regard. So.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay, and then I just have, what do I got here? One more page, which is parking and traffic. So here we see, and we know we're in a kind of transitional phase with our parking, street sweeping situation. So January, February, due to the transition in the street sweeping from the whole community to the even and odd sides, we didn't issue any street sweeping citations. We focused on just doing warnings to be informative to the community members. We did, both those top 2 months, January, February, issue 28 regular parking citations, which would be, blocking a driveway in front of a fire hydrant, that type of stuff. And then March, we did start doing some enforcement for street sweeping due to the street sweeping signage being installed. And we issued 44 street sweeping citations and then continued with the warnings. So,
When did you give citations versus warnings?
we started in March, and in March we.
Middle of March or?
I'm not sure on the exact day on that. It was towards the beginning of the month, but we've signed just a relatively small portion of the community with the new signage for parking enforcement. So we're working on, increasing the signage as required by the vehicle code for that. So, okay. That's all I have. If you have any other questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your.
Thank you for your time and your questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Captain.
Next, Joe, you said the youth center is going, delayed till next month?
The youth center and the
Orange
Orange County Fire Authority delayed to next month. We have 4C, who is David Padilla, the general manager of our new street sweeping company, Sweeping Corp of America. He might be on Zoom. Do we have a David Padilla on Zoom tonight? He had he called me and texted me earlier about 4 o'clock. He was in a car accident. He was at the hospital.
Oh.
He was hoping to get out in time. He was supposed to be here, but he was going to try to get on Zoom.
Dave is not here, sir.
So we're going to bypass him.
Looks like we're going to have to skip that, okay. If I could just ask the audience, when somebody else is speaking, if we could keep down the talking to a minimum, I would appreciate it. Be polite and it helps us be able to listen to the speaker. Thank you. So we're at public forum. There were no additions to the agenda. First up on public forum is, and we have a speaker on public forum as well, but we have 3 cards. Let's do those first. We'll try to minimize remarks to the extent possible. Appreciate it. We've got a busy agenda today. First up is Nia Hartman. Yeah, that's probably Nia's. I accidentally dropped it. I was looking for that.
Hello, I'm Nia Hartman, your resident cycling ambassador or whatever. I'd like to, first of all, really thank the Rossmoor Community Services District for putting together an event. It's on May 21st. Joe Mendoza and Chris Argueta, is that how you say it? Argueta, put this together with the California Highway Patrol. There are flyers out front. There's one up there. It's going to be from 10 o'clock until 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. They're going to have an obstacle course for kids. They're going to do helmets and safety and other kinds of booths and stuff. So it should be a really fun event, informative, and a really good time. After that event, at 2 to 5 p.m. still in Rush Park at the Pavilion, we're going to be putting on a bike expo. And the bike expo will be more for teens and adults. Anybody who comes by bike can store their bike at the Bike Valet, and they will be entered into our raffle. We've got lots of raffle items. We're going to have vintage bikes, classic bikes, cargo bikes, all kinds of really interesting things for people to look at, tire changing clinics, and other safety events, that kind of stuff. So both of those are on Saturday, May 21st, from 10 to 1, and then from 2 to 5. I'd like to get everybody out. It'll be advertised on Nextdoor, the school district, and any place else we can put it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nia.
Thank you, Nia.
Thank you, Nia.
Next up is Maureen Waters.
Good evening. First of all, Joe, thank you for this. Very nice. Congratulations, Nathan, on your Boston Marathon
Thank
finish. But I'm here to talk about crime. And I know the Sheriff's Department says that we're relatively low in crime. This past weekend, I was out of town, but an elderly lady around the corner from us got burglarized, and she was home. And I heard, I don't know if it's true, that it was not classified as a home invasion robbery. I don't know if he can speak of that, if it was. And if it wasn't classified as a home invasion robbery, I'd like to know why. This lady, her front door was locked. Now her garage driveway gate was not locked. They got in through her bedroom. They sliced a screen. You know, she had her window open. She was home. That is concerning to the people of Rossmoor, to Nextdoor. I mean, you know, the social media. But
Was she caught?
what?
Was the burglar caught?
No, they got away. They got away. They got a description of the car, but they didn't get the license plate. So I would encourage the directors and Mr. Mendoza to research these cameras that the sheriff spoke about. And even though it kind of sounds funny. We don't want him just doing loops in Rossmoor. I think the residents would like to see him doing loops and zigzags through Rossmoor. And I feel that there's probably more quote-unquote serious crimes that occur in Anaheim and Midway City, and that they're called out of Rossmoor more than we think. So I would just like a more accurate answer as to the percentage that they really are in Rossmoor. Thank you.
Captain Knudsen, do you know anything about that event that you can share with us?
Yeah, I'll primarily just speak to their question about the classification of it and why it wasn't considered a quote-unquote home invasion. So a home invasion would be a type of crime where they use, force or fear to get past the homeowner, to kick in the front door, to use kind of like a robbery. Like if I was to come up to you and, grab your purse and, rip it off your body, that's what a home invasion is. In this case, it was a burglary. She just happened to be home. Fortunately, she wasn't injured. It'd be
So
my
if they break
guess
into
that
the home, that's a burglary.
that'd be a burglary.
If
It's
they do
just-
it with violence, that's makes it a home invasion.
Correct. It's my understanding that the victim, saw the suspects, yelled out to him, made some type of comment, and then they fled the location. So we do have some good investigative leads on it, and, we're working to track these individuals down. And part of that leads is, like I was explaining to Mr. Mendoza, is one of these types of automatic license plate reader camera systems that, the neighboring cities have installed that we're able to get access to search for a vehicle even during that time frame. So, but yeah, fortunately, she was okay. I know it's a scary thing. Similar situations happen to, my family members. It's very, disconcerting, of course, so.
So had the burglars harmed, intimidated, or done something, then it would be classified as a home invasion.
Correct.
So a burglary, you're in your house, you stay in your room, and the whole house gets vandalized, that's just a burglary
Yes, by definition.
by definition.
Burglary is just the entering of a structure with the intention to commit a theft or some type of felony,
But once
regardless
there's
of whether someone's home or not. For a
once there's
burglary.
engagement,
Right,
potentially it could be a home invasion
Correct.
classification.
yes.
Add on assault charges and other things.
It's possible, yeah, depending on, what happens. Yeah.
So on a burglary, you catch these per people. What's the penalty?
Well, there's a lot of variables, and that's going to be, what is the person's criminal history, that type of stuff. What was the loss? Generally speaking, you're looking at, by statute, 2 to 5 years. So whether or not they get convicted of that, that's up to the district attorney and the public defender and the judge to work out what they think is the appropriate sentence.
But the penalties are the same whether or not there's somebody there.
Correct.
Scare the bejeebers out of somebody.
Right.
Doesn't-
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know of the burglaries that have occurred in Rossmoor, which ones were with homes that had alarm systems versus no alarm systems?
I do not know that off the top of my head. Yeah.
Do you have a sense that homes that are alarmed are less likely to be burglarized?
I would lean to say that that's probably a good guess, that that's probably the case. I think anything that's preventative or shows that you're actively monitoring your residents, whether it's a old school type of alarm system or the Ring camera system or some other type of home security, what's the other one, Nest or something like that, Simply Safe, any of those things. I think a lot of these, the criminal element, they're looking for the easy target. They don't want to, most of them don't want to encounter or engage people. They want to just, slip in, steal what it is they want to take, and then get out. They don't want confrontation. So if you can put up some type of, system that is going to deter them, then you're going to lower your chances of being victimized.
In communities that have neighborhood watch programs, is that an effective tool?
I believe so. I think it's helpful as far as, disseminating educational information and then communicating what's happened. I just encourage people, in the community, if you see something that's out of place, please call our dispatch line. And, to get a call on the board, to get the deputy over here. At least if they did get pulled away, then there's a call pending for them to, come back to. So.
Thank you, Captain.
And I had one question. I know we've asked this in the past. So, I'm going to ask it for this incident. Can you keep us apprised? Can you keep the community apprised, this board apprised on how this, certainly if you get apprehension of the person going in, but it would be nice to know if your department is on the crime that we're getting, that if any of these cases get resolved, and so I'm just asking that on this one and others, that if you do, it would be nice for the community to hear that from you or your staff.
Yeah, I can do that, definitely. Like I said, this crime, we definitely have some good information on who the suspects are, and our directed enforcement team, which is an investigative team that helps out our regular investigators. These guys are the ones that track these folks down, that do the surveillance and whatnot. And I'm pretty confident that we'll have them in custody here pretty shortly.
Good.
So, and then to the lady's other point, as far as the amount of crimes, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, the number of crimes that happen here is not a lot, but they're still all significant, and I don't want to, downplay that it's, one crime is less significant, because with each crime there's a victim, and I've been a victim of crime myself, my family members, and I realize how, how much of an effect that can have on a person, so they're all very important to us. So, we definitely, our focus is that the deputies are in here spending the time, patrolling the area as much as they can.
One last thing, and to Dr. Waters' statement, that please convey from me, and I'm sure this board and our community, that we love to see Orange County deputies in our community, that we please convey that we want to see them patrol, and I mean, in your presentation, I know that it sounds like you tell them that, hey, your beat is this, and yes, they get pulled away, but, and again, Captain, we have a great relationship. I know you have a good relationship with Mr. Mendoza, but I would just convey to them, and I know that we all do the same thing. We wave and everything, but please convey to them, we like seeing them patrolling in Rossmoor and keeping our community safe.
Yeah, I'll continue to pass the
Thank you.
message along for sure, definitely.
Thank you very much again. Our last speaker card is Beth Coburn.
Hi, good evening. I actually came to support the youth center.
And you can lower your mic a little, then you can, you don't have to stand.
I came to support the youth center, so I'll miss it probably, but, and our bus had a catalytic converter stolen right in the parking lot by Oak, so it's everywhere. But I'm here because I'm really concerned about the kids riding their bikes in Rossmoor. They don't have helmets on. They pay no attention to any kind of stop signs. They ride in packs. I've seen them diagonal from Montecito across to Rossmoor Center Way, right through the middle of the intersection, disregarding any cars that are there. It's an accident waiting to happen. As an ex-ER nurse, I don't want to see it happen, but it's like you don't see helmets on these kids anymore, and that's a state law.
Yeah.
So what's going on with our parents? What's going on with our law officers? Do they not stop and cite these kids? That's all it would take, is to have cite a couple of them, especially when they catch one of these groups that have these electric bikes and all. It's danger waiting to happen. So Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Clarify that that's a THP thing, not a sheriff's department. Just-
If you want
Oh,
to.
Ms. Coburn, thank you for speaking. Just for clarification, the citation issue is a California Highway Patrol issue in Rossmoor. It's not a sheriff's department issue. And no, we understand. We spoke about it. Okay. Okay. No, I understand. And all I wanted to point out was the sheriff's department isn't responsible for that, and they would love to help. Let me tell you, Captain Knudsen would love to help. The CHP was here last month and presented on this issue a lot. They were at our traffic meeting, which I think we'll get to later in the agenda, and they'll also be at the May 21st bike safety event that Ms. Hartman spoke about. But we all agree with you. We all agree with the idea that the bike safety is an issue right now, really more than it needs to be, and we don't want to see an accident happen. So thank you for bringing it up. I just wanted to clarify, who would be the responsible citation issuer.
And we do hope that we have a great attendance at the bicycle safety event, and that parents bring their teenagers and pre-teenagers, and everybody will hopefully come out a little wiser. So anybody else here tonight on the public forum? Joe?
Do we have anybody else on Zoom that would like to speak?
Hello, Joe, can you hear me?
I believe we have.
Yes,
some-
Dave. This is Dave Vandervoot. Is there going to be an update on CR&R and the trash pickup later on in the meeting tonight?
Which one?
So I believe he asked, is there going to be an update on CR&R? Did you say lids?
Yes.
Trash lid update.
I can give you a quick update, Mr. Vanderhoek.
Great question.
The CR&R has indicated that the back order for trash lids and trash cans, in some cases, have been received. They're scheduling a rollout this month, and everybody in Rossmoor should be receiving their can or their lid or whatever's owed to them. And we hope that everything gets back to normal, and they'll be doing the 3-can pickup after they distribute all those cans and lids.
I mean, maybe it's moot at this point, but I happen to think that the RHA's suggestion was a darn good one. Did CR&R have any reaction to that? Which was basically, instead of giving us colored lids, thereby limiting our options and our flexibility for cans, we'd have signs on the cans, and then you could have 2 yard waste and 1 household garbage one week, and the reverse the next week.
I believe that CR&R and the first district, right? Mm-hmm. Did respond. I did see a letter from them to RHA, and basically the reason why they could not accommodate that request was cross-contamination, and they didn't want to, I guess, mix cans with different types of trash. But I will get you that letter.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody else on Zoom? We're supposed to have the Water District on.
Yes, let me do a brief introduction.
Oh, we have one more person in the audience. Oh, you're the Water District, okay.
With us tonight, I've asked him to come during public forum because we talked after the agenda was out, is Ken Beccarelli. He's a general manager for Golden State Water District. He does have a couple of, informational items he'd like to provide. One is a project they're doing within Rossmoor, and then the other one is he's going to talk a little bit about our vacant lots. Ken?
Very good. Thank you, members of the board. And Mr. Mendoza, I appreciate the opportunity to address the community and you folks and let you know about 2 construction projects that are starting in your community. One is called the Ruth Lane area main replacement, and the other is a fire hydrant replacement project. Next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you. So the Ruth Lane Pipeline Replacement Project is just over 2 miles of main replacement, replacing out 6-inch and 14-inch older mains and replacing all of the services and the fire hydrants on those mains. You can see from the project location map that this work is generally focused up in the northwest corner of the Rossmoor community here. It does include, as I mentioned, 247 domestic services and over 24 new fire hydrants with that main replacement project. It is scheduled to begin this month. They will likely start with potholing efforts, and then as more materials come in, they'll start with the construction, which is generally parallel to the existing systems. So they build a parallel distribution system, test it all, and then tie it in. So there will be some shutdowns also towards the end of the project. And I'll get to later how we intend to communicate that to the community. The schedule is 210 to 240 construction days generally. The 210 is for substantial completion and another 30 days to wrap up the project. Working hours generally from 8 to 4:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. Total project estimate about $3.2 million. The second project that we're beginning that affects this community, next slide please, is called our West Orange County Fire Hydrant Replacement Project. And that map shows, generally it's a heat map, it's a fire hydrant heat map for those fire hydrants that will be replaced. There's, in the overall project, which is our entire West Orange County system, that includes Stanton, Cypress, Los Alamitos, Rossmoor, a portion of Seal Beach that you can see in that map, the Rossmoor shops, and a portion of La Palma. Out of 52 hydrants that we're replacing in this project, 39 of them are in the Rossmoor community. So much like your trees and other infrastructure, the pipelines and services and hydrants are over 60 years old. And this project aggressively replaces a large majority, well, it's not a majority of the hydrants in Rossmoor, but it's a vast majority of the hydrants in this project that are being replaced. Same basic construction schedule, although the contractor will be starting on hydrant replacements in Cypress, so they're not expected to begin construction in the Rossmoor area with replacements till June. Total project value about $1.5 million. One thing to note on this project is the contractor will use one of our vacant yards at the intersection of Copa del Oro and Montecito as a staging lot for materials and equipment. So we've notified the customers, the residents, the neighbors in that area that construction activity is going to be occurring. As to notifications for homes near these hydrants, that'll be done as the contractor schedules ahead. So it's expected a hydrant or two during the week. So the construction notices will go out a week to 14 days in advance of the residents located close to the hydrants that will be replaced. And that will also include advanced construction parking notices, so just locally by each of the hydrants for this second project. Next slide, please. So our outreach a little bit late, communicating with this board and with Joe on this project, but we have distributed construction notices to the residents along the construction area for that Ruth Lane pipeline project, so they're aware that we're coming. They'll start seeing markings on the street for underground service alert. They'll start seeing contractor activity with the potholing. We will update the project information on our website. We'll share that information with Rossmoor community here, and both through the Rossmoor Homeowners Association and through the RCSD here. As I mentioned, we'll post periodic updates on our website and share that information through social media as well. Next slide, please. So any questions about those two construction projects?
Do you expect to replace other fire hydrants in the coming years?
Yes, as a matter of fact, what happens is typically if we have a hydrant maintenance program, so we'll go through and test the operability, paint, and make sure that they're functioning on a 3 to 5 year cycle. So as we go out on the regular maintenance, if we come across hydrants that are not operating to the optimum, either they're the valve or the operating nuts or some other part or component needs to be replaced. Sometimes they're replaced immediately, but if it's hydrants that we no longer have easy access to replacement parts, then they go on a replacement schedule like this.
And for the yard at Copa de Oro and Montecito, will the hours be the same hours, the 8 to 4:30, or can residents expect that maybe someone's going to be there at 7 o'clock preparing before the 8 o'clock construction?
They may be there early, but they're not supposed to be creating a lot of noise and disturbance at those locations. So while there may be intermittent traffic going in and out, or construction crews their trucks and equipment, we are trying to keep the hours of disturbance in the community to that 8 to 4:30.
And then the vehicles that come to that yard, they're not going to be parking there during the day. They're going to go out to wherever they're working. Is that?
I'm not certain. That depends on the work crews and how the team stages.
Okay. I mentioned that because, I mean, parking in that area is already a really big issue to the community. So if we have crews coming and parking in the same area every day for, 9 months, 11 months, I hope they would understand that, finding an alternative to filling up the neighborhood right there and not allowing residents to park would be a challenge.
Right. Some of the crews where their trucks are utility type trucks and they have tools and equipment, they will be part of the marked off zones for construction, with traffic control. There are traffic control plans approved by the county. So a certain amount of the street they're able to, take out of use temporarily during the construction hours. I would expect to see some of the crews operating on those teams to be there. These aren't typically very large construction crews, 4 to 6, maybe 8, 8 to 10, depending on how much traffic control is required, if there's any flag folks, and typically operator backhoe and some hand crews. But we can look at the options, and as things go, if we need to utilize additional space for parking, we'll certainly look at that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to express that if 8 trucks show up at Montecito and Copa de Oro and park there for the day, and then, they take 2 trucks to go to a site that's off, somewhere else in the neighborhood, then it's really jamming those neighbors every time where the construction's being done somewhere else. It'd be better if they kind of moved along to where, there already was an area that's kind of being closed down as it is for the construction. So.
Understood. We'll talk to our construction team, the inspector and the project engineers about this as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would keep Joe posted on updates, developments, delays, issues. We would very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We
Thank
promise if we have complaints from the neighbors, we'll be sure to pass them on to you.
I'm sure I'll be back in front of the board if that's the case.
How long has this project been in the works?
So the design on the Ruthie Lane project has probably been 4 to 6 months.
Oh, okay, not long. And then how much digging is going to be on Ruthie Lane, would you say? They're doing a parallel, they're boring under it, right? So it's at the beginning and end, or?
No, it's open trench the entire way.
Okay, so what's the street going to look? We got brand new streets in Rossmoor, so what's Ruthie Lane going to look like after the crews are done?
So I'll need to look at the permit conditions, but typically we're required to replace in kind. Some cases that would be, and we're also not typically allowed to dig up streets that are new. There's a moratorium. So when you say new, I'm not sure we would have gotten a permit to open them up, because there is a moratorium on these types of projects, except for emergency projects.
I would just think that there would be, again, I know we live in unincorporated, but a little more coordination, because we literally just got brand-new streets. So, my concern is for the residents of Ruthie Lane, they got a brand-new street, now they're gonna have this,
It needs to not be a patch job. It needs
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
done. Right.
Absolutely, and again, we'll look at the permit conditions, but that's typically covered by the permit, whether it's a T-cap or a partial lane, a slurry seal over part of it. And again, when you say new, I would find it very hard to believe that we were able to break the moratorium, so.
well, I would then ask, because you've said it 2 or 3 times, that you follow up with Mr. Mendoza on that. Like, what is Public Works, what's the permit say? Because I'm pretty sure Ruth Elaine got a brand-new street.
Well, they were slurry sealed and.
No, I think it's brand-new
I think it
asphalt.
was dug off.
I think they picked the entire street up and laid asphalt down. So, anyway, if it was my street, I would want that, I'd want my same brand-new street back, so, just a concern, so it's gonna be that, the picture you just showed of
If you
Ruthie
can
Lane-
go back to that photo, I think it's on slide 2.
Yeah, so it's gonna be, you're gonna put in a whatever, right, parallel to the existing, test it, so dig it up and then pour it back and then just cover that patch. That's typically, you just cover that hole you made with fresh asphalt, right?
That's-
Segment, correct?
I'd have to look at that because I'm not absolutely certain, but if it's not, again, there's a requirement to at least backfill with temporary mix. So the backfill with temporary mix is a temporary situation. It's a cold mix of asphalt, but typically a T-cap is what's required in the final pavement section, and that's usually wider than the trench by at least a foot or two. Sometimes, depending on where that pipe is located in the street, it may be a whole lane.
And they use a T-cap to be less impacted by cracking and stuff like that, correct?
Correct. Less of a chance of settling or differential settlement in that trench zone.
Okay, so,
Can you explain a T-cap for the?
Oh, sure. So backfill will go along and dig. Typically, they may have to score the street with a asphalt saw first, or hard saw. And typically, they'll cut out the trench section. Then when they go back, they usually have to either grind or remove another shorter depth of asphalt beyond the trench zone, so that that's the T-cap, essentially. The trench zone is compacted back to 90%, and then road base is put in just below the final asphalt cap.
Homeowners will be able to get in and out of their houses all through this construction?
That's correct. Yeah, if there's, obviously, as we're going past a driveway with the trench, there may be some temporary delay on that, but the contractor's required to maintain access to all residents.
Plywood?
Not for, no, plywood's not for,
What are they covering it with?
well, steel plates would be more typical for traffic, but again, typically what's done is they'll do sections like that where they'll lay in the pipe, shade it, temporarily backfill so residents can get in and out. And it's a shorter delay. We're not talking about days, a full day or anything of non-access to your driveway.
Homeowners will be interrupted in terms of their water service for, you're looking at it go on, off and on the same day.
That's correct.
Nobody's going to have to spend a night there without water.
That's the way we build them. Yes, sir.
and so there's going to be like a on-site project manager and stuff like that?
There's always a project superintendent with the contractor. The project inspector has access by phone to the project engineer and project managers.
So, when this construction happens, so we alleviate calls for our general manager, because this is not in his
Right.
purview of, taking care of this project. He's going to have those contact.
Correct,
That
and
information.
I left-
And it's that number?
No, I left copies of the construction notices on the file here, and they're also connected to the website links, but I'll leave those with Joe. But the construction notice has the contact information, all of the pertinent information, including the inspector's number, as well as our 800 customer service number.
And when just one more time real quick, Ruthie Lane's going to start, when's it going to start getting cut up?
They're probably going to begin potholing this week or next week.
Oh, wow, okay.
And potholing is individual. How they do that potholing may be with backhoes, but it may also be with less evasive, what's called a hydro excavator. So it's basically a big vacuum that will core out where they believe the utility should be according to the marks. Sometimes you use that type of equipment. If they're using a backhoe, then it's typically going to be part of the overall construction trench and the construction
Is that why
reconstruction.
I see all USA lines through on our brand-new streets in Rossmoor? Is because of this project?
That throughout all of Rossmoor?
Well, it's through a lot of it. I know I drove Ruthie Lane the other day, and I told my wife, boy, why is all these USA, marks? I understand now, but
From
it's, so
in that neighborhood, yes.
Okay,
So in that area.
has the residents on Ruthie Lane been notified that the project's going to start this week, or next week, or the following week?
That was on the construction notice.
So that's a yes?
That's a yes.
As far as you know, that the
We can bring up the construction notice if you'd like. Better make sure. One of the PDFs, actually I left two PDFs, one for the Ruth Lane, and I can explain what the other one is. The other one is the notice to those residents that live near the Copa del Oro project to let them know that a project.
and how were they noticed?
Those were hand-delivered.
Hand
notices. Yes, sir. Yes, that one, perfect.
On the fire hydrant project, these 52 were, or these 39 were identified based on what criteria?
Their age and their operability. So most of them were installed in 1958, 1959, 1960, and they're what's called a dry barrel hydrant, and they're past their useful life
So
and very difficult to get parts.
are they the last of the original fire hydrants in Rossmoor, or are there more of the same vintage?
I can't answer that without looking into it further, but I know in part both a condition assessment and a consideration about how these hydrants and the system valves associated with them may fall into play for another operational plan that we're doing, especially during the drought. We do some water quality flushing throughout the areas that we serve, and typically that involves opening up a fire hydrant and flushing it to basically the storm drain system for a certain amount of time. We've purchased some equipment that actually will take the water from a hydrant, run it through a filter system, and put it back into another hydrant, and that's, again, to conserve more water. When we rolled out that equipment about a year ago, we've found that some of these types of hydrants didn't fare very, very well when you reverse flow in them. So bolts that have been corroded over the decades, literally decades, just a little bit of reverse flow, a little bit of reverse impulse. Yes, sir. So we've selected them based on criteria through both our water quality department, our asset management teams that do condition assessments, and our operation teams that go through with the maintenance programs on a 5-year.
How long have you been with Golden State?
9 years now.
9 years now?
Yes,
Do you
sir.
remember them replacing any fire hydrants in the previous 9 years?
Yes, sir.
They
Yeah.
have?
Yes, every year we have what's called, as part of our capital program, we have a blanket program that's managed by operations. And again, through our normal operations and maintenance, when we come across hydrants that no longer really operate well. We've replaced them one at a time. In this case, we were falling behind on that and decided to piece a larger replacement project together.
Any idea how many we have in Rossmoor?
Several hundred, but I can find out more detail from you.
Just, because, yeah, I doubt that they, Ross Cortese would have put in different kinds of fire hydrants, so they're probably all the same, all those of the same vintage are the same kind. So if they haven't been replaced, I assume those would be on your capital improvement. Even if they're working now, they're not likely to be working in the future. And the worst thing that happens is when you find out when there's a fire that your fire hydrant isn't working.
The good part about that is usually within 200 to 300, maybe 500 feet at the most, you'll find another hydrant. So that is, and again, I'm not trying to downplay the operation and maintenance, but Golden State Water Company in general has a very aggressive capital replacement program. And better, I would say, than the ASCE would give us a better scorecard than a lot of the infrastructure.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate too. I mean, I think we would only ask that we'd get a little, maybe a little more notice on construction. Joe, was this, any of this going to be in your report or anything, or this is, like, when did you know of it?
I met with Ken this
Friday.
week, Friday, and
Yeah.
asked him to come and
You
speak
first
to me.
learned of it Friday.
So
Is that
did,
a notice in the school district gave us on the
on the solar panels? That's true.
Anyway, I appreciate that comment because I know that I'm guilty of that.
What's that, of the late notice?
Of the late notice, yes, sir.
But this was hand-delivered to every resident in that construction zone area, right?
That's correct.
All right.
So the second thing I wanted to again, I met with Joe Friday. Finally, the COVID handcuffs were taken off a little bit, and we had an opportunity to meet in person. I appreciated his time, and we need to do it more often and more frequently. We talked about a couple things that are coming up, and I would venture to guess you'll see me again at a future board meeting to talk about the drought and talk about drought conditions and how that affects water service, what everyone's going to be expected to do to fall in line with state mandates regarding water supply restrictions. And again, we'll get back to you folks, but related to that, Joe and I talked about doing another water use efficiency audit for the community here for Rossmoor Community Services District. We did one back in 2015 with prior board and prior management, and we'd certainly like to be able to dust those reports off and bring in that outside consultant and work with Joe and his staff to look at water use efficiency at the parks and this building.
Where does Golden State Water get their water from?
So Golden State Water Company serves communities throughout the state, so over 70. So we get our water from different areas, but here in Orange County, the district I manage, we pull water out of the groundwater basin that's managed by Orange County Water District. So we pump the majority of our water out of the groundwater basin, and then the rest is imported by both Colorado River, by Metropolitan Water District through the Colorado River Aqueduct and the State Water Project. You must know over the years that both those supplies are strained at and continue to be challenged. The basin here in Orange County is well managed with resources that include recycled sanitation water, recycled to drinking water conditions, and placed back into the ground before it's pumped out of groundwater wells. A portion of everyone's investment in infrastructure in Orange County has gone to that local reliability system. We rely on Mother Nature for some of that free water from the Santa Ana River watershed, which is also well managed, and percolation basins and other systems that we do our best to put everything back in the ground that we can, let Mother Nature filter it and then pump it out. But then a portion is again recharged while water is available from import sources. And even during years like these past, water is available certain times of the year. Sometimes it's reserved for environmental purposes up in the San Joaquin, Sacramento River Delta. But again, in Orange County, I think we do a great job, especially in North and Central Orange County, utilizing that incredible resource beneath us, the groundwater basin. So we're going to be working with Joe and his staff on pulling in a consultant to look at water use efficiency opportunities. And then the final thing that Joe asked me to talk to the board about is our vacant lots. So I mentioned ours being Golden State Water Companies. In Rossmoor, we have several lots that used to be groundwater production sites, but because of seawater intrusion in this part of the basin, they're no longer utilized for those purposes. 2 of those lots we partner with Rossmoor Community Services District, and you folks operate mini parks on portions of those 2 lots. I'm going to be working with Joe and his staff to look at those agreements. They were done 30 years ago, 30 plus, and some things have changed over the years, so we'll look at opportunities for Rossmoor to continue to utilize those, maybe utilize more of the lot as well for other purposes. And then Joe has expressed the board's potential interest for some of our other vacant lots. I mentioned one we're using as a yard by Copa del Oro and Montecito for construction purposes. We're utilizing another one up off Coleridge for that Ruth Ann project. And when we started seeing restraints on materials and logistics chain, we started to pre-purchase some pipe for these projects, and some of that pipe is stored on that yard. The contractor will use that yard for part of their construction and staging. These lots are typically prime residential lots. We've got one on the corner of Baskerville, and I'm drawing a blank right now. We have that double lot on Coleridge, we have that lot on Montecito, and Foster and Kempton.
Yellowtail, you have one on...
That is actually still an active well, and for the life of me, I'm a registered civil engineer, I cannot figure out why that one isn't affected by the seawater as were the other 4 or 5. And it may have something to do, I'm sorry.
So that one is not one the district is considering declaring surplus.
No, that is an active groundwater production well,
But
yeah.
Montecito, you are going to be declaring that one surplus?
We have not decided if we're declaring any of them surplus. They've been vacant for over 30 years, much like the vacant and non-operable. So the Kempton and Foster, we call them plants, those sites, those properties, they were plants at one time. They were production facilities. But all of those have been inactive for over 30 years now. And we don't see conditions changing where they would likely be utilized for new wells and new production. That doesn't mean that they might not be used for other purposes, but...
like staging sites, for example.
Well, and honestly, one of the prime purposes in this market might be to sell on the open market at fair market value and utilize those funds for other capital improvements.
If I remember right, and you can correct me or our attorney can, when Golden State Water Company is a utility, not a public, not a public agency.
That's correct.
Do you have to give first call to public agencies when you sell your lots or not?
No. No.
Courtesy. And if you do it, you would be appraising those lots based on highest and best use?
That's correct.
Not on current use.
And as a matter of fact, so we are a regulated utility, regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. So land sale would have to be approved through the PUC. And part of the criteria for that sale is to show that we are getting fair market value for that property at its highest and best use. Now, the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, has a process for that. It's called the Passcode process. And what that process is, it looks at the You know, the Foster and Kempton sites, there's a history of joint use already, and I would like to think that that can continue. We would need to see what's needed to revamp that, and if we expand the use to the rest of the lot, we may need to go back through the PUC, but I'll have to find more information about that.
Do all the lots have wells on them?
They all have properly abandoned and destroyed wells. So, and there's probably lots throughout the rest of California that, you know, have those from time to time, but they're properly destroyed and permitted in a properly destroyed way. So those holes the original holes go several hundred feet, you know, underground, but they're very narrow in diameter, 30-inch usually on the top, or 24.
If you were to sell them in the open market, would you have to invest money so are they capped?
Yes, properly destroyed is,
okay, so
is
they're all-
filled and capped, right? And they're capped below grade, so typically 5 feet below grade is where the last lift of construction concrete. Usually they're filled with a gravel, pea gravel, mixed to a certain point, and then a slurry or neat cement for several hundred feet, and then
How much of it is, how far does the dirt go down before you start digging into what, the pea gravel and the concrete?
No, you would hit concrete at about 5 feet. Yeah, the pea gravel, I'm sorry, was filled the lower hundreds of feet up to a certain point if the casing is solid, and then wherever the casing the casing is a hole in the ground that you pump water out. So basically, it's solid for a good amount of time, solid steel cylinder, and then it's perforated at the structure, at the geological structures that we can get water out. Those are typically sealed with a neat cement so that there's no opportunity for either, you know, contamination from above or from the different strata within the geology.
Hitting 5 feet down when you're digging a foundation, that's not gonna be a problem.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be digging for a pool around here, but also you may actually hit groundwater during certain times of the year at 5 feet.
If you're digging several hundred feet, groundwater here is pretty shallow, isn't it?
It depends on the time of year, yeah, and
But how far down before you hit groundwater?
so the groundwater that we pump is several hundred feet below, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, below where you
Groundwater
might hit
long
it.
before that, wouldn't you?
I haven't seen a well drilled in this area in a while.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, certainly that Montecito facility seems like one that would be the most attractive to the district and the least attractive to somebody building a home. I mean, it's on two busier streets. It's, you know, the location is not like, as opposed to the Coleridge site, which is, you know,
Or deep into a
between two
residential.
houses across the street from, in the middle of the track. You can't see putting a park or a community garden there, but I could see putting one on Montecito, right adjacent to the Montecito Center. But
And
We'll continue with the discussions with
So
Mr.
you
Mendoza.
guys don't know what exactly you want to do with these properties? No decision has been made yet?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And how many of these lots are there in Rossmoor?
If we count Foster and Kempton, I think it's 5, right? Foster, Kempton.
Yellowtail?
Nope, no, Yellowtail's off the book, sorry.
But
That
Yellowtail
one's still
is-
producing groundwater.
You mean, non-operating sites?
No, yeah, right,
So
I'm
you've
sorry.
got Foster and Kempton. You've
Correct.
got Montecito. You've got
Baskerville,
Coleridge, Baskerville. Is there
That's
one
it.
more, or is that it?
I believe that's it.
Okay.
Great.
All right, well, thank you again for your time. We'll definitely be communicating on a more timely basis with Mr. Mendoza and appreciate the opportunity.
We appreciate
I'd like to
you
thank Ken.
coming here.
The local district here in Los Alamitos did come out and do a audit on our meters and on our irrigation systems. But Ken's taken it a whole different approach and is going to do a deeper dive into our entire system and into giving us a better plan for the utilization of our irrigation and water. So I appreciate them doing that, yeah.
Are we using recycled water for irrigation? Do we have
We don't have that
capability?
No.
So in Orange County, as I mentioned, or in most of Orange County, we recycle all that wastewater at a single plant in Fountain Valley. So all of the wastewater is collected, recycled, and treated to above drinking water standards, pumped back into the groundwater basin that we pump out of. For other recycled water use, it'd be secondary treated water, purple pipe. You have to do parallel.
yes,
You have to do parallel pipelines throughout all your streets, and either master plan that community like it, or be ready to rip up all over again. And again, in Orange County here, we're already taking 100 million gallons a day of that sewage is going back into the groundwater basin as pure water that we're able to pump months later out of the ground. So it's a excellent investment in everyone's dollars. So we're actually the world example of a recycled system like that in Orange County here.
Great.
And I say we collectively, Orange County Water District, Orange County Sand District, and all of the folks that have been involved in those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the actual agenda. Let's see, reports to the board, quarterly tree report. There's Mary. Given how late it is, a summary. I really want to hear your report, but a summary would be in order.
Okay, I'll try to summarize it as best I can. Good evening. So during the first quarter of 2022, this is a quarterly report from January to April. Orange County Public Works assisted with a safety trimming of trees that I identified as having safety risks with larger dead limbs within the crowns. Tree planting for the fall-winter season concluded, and there were 140 trees planted in the 2021-2022 season. 19 trees were either dead or considered high risk were removed from Rossmoor parkways, and one hazardous tree was removed from Rossmoor Park. A total of 7 unauthorized trimming citations were issued to property owners. There was some windy weather in the first quarter, and supplemental pruning and more frequent tree inspection proved effective in preventing very many limb failures, but there were 4, and there was one that resulted in vehicle damage, and that tree was found to be suffering from a disease that causes rapid decline in trees, and that tree has been removed. And there was a claim, a vehicle damage claim for that incident. Rossmoor has been awarded Tree City status for the 12th straight year and continues to be one of the many cities or communities across the United States that is committed to maintaining and growing their tree cover. Some of the benefits that trees bring to urban environments include cooler temperatures, higher property values, healthier residents, and cleaner air. To celebrate trees, the Rossmoor Community Services District hosted an Arbor Day event on April 20th at Rush Park. The event featured a Tree City proclamation read by our CSD Board First Vice President Mark Niddickman, a tree scavenger hunt for the kids, a craft table hosted by the Youth Center, a plant and tree raffle, and a community tree planting with a tree graciously donated by the Rossmoor Women's Club. We also planted a tree in dedication to longtime Rossmoor resident George Lynn Seligman. And George Lynn is here tonight. George Lynn is a 50-year Rossmoor resident, longtime member of the RHA, the Rossmoor Women's Club, and a 40-year Boy Scout volunteer. And she is also one of the founders of the Rossmoor Community Festival, which went on for years. We were going to Joe has some flowers for you.
Yep, let's do it.
Let's take a photo. Right over here. Mary, you want to get in?
Sure.
No, I'll get, I'm already facing, I'll take a picture. I'm already facing you. All right, one, two. One, two, three. One more. One, two, three. Thank you, congratulations. She increased our audience, by the way.
That's okay. You can enjoy looking at them.
Should have given her a little tree, you know.
So that concludes the report. Oh, I also wanted to mention that the Arbor Day event was featured in the Event News Enterprise, and the tree planting for George Lynn was also featured. I don't know if you saw that, George Lynn, but. Okay, good. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sparky? No.
No.
I had just a couple questions. The
Sure.
resident service requests,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a general idea, was there, what most of those service requests were about? Were they trimming or?
Generally, most of the service requests have been regarding tree planting. I had an overview for the year, if you remember. I didn't do, I'm not going to do a quarterly pie chart, but I will do one for the entire year, at the end of this year. And last year, it was mainly, the majority were for planting inquiries. So sometimes trim requests, tree removal requests, sometimes calling to report a downed limb. There could be a variety of things, but the majority seem to be, fortunately, requesting for tree planting or information on that program. So.
One other question, and I'll let you go. We have, you list under vacant sites, 102 are on the plant list, and then there are 27 in the parks, they're not on the plant list. Why do we have vacant sites in the parks that we're not planting?
I do reserve some spots in the parks for memorial trees to be planted. So we did plant, I believe, 12 trees in the park, and 6 in each park this year, just as part of the regular plant list. But there aren't unlimited spots for trees in the parks. So we do want to reserve those for people that want to plant a tree in dedication to a family member or a loved one.
And the school parkways, those are ones that the school district doesn't want trees?
No, we can plant those. That's just budgetary. I don't have enough budget to just go in and plant all the, and also because we have to also water the new trees that are planted in those school parkways. Their irrigation just isn't sufficient for those new trees to survive. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I had, I think, 4 crepe myrtles planted on the Argyle side of Hopkinson Elementary, and those were, I was able to water those, for the time needed, 6 months or so, I think even longer. And so those trees are doing really well. But if we plant too many at once, it's going to be hard to keep those sufficiently watered with our resources.
They're all on your list to plant eventually.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Mary, how many trees do you water a given day, a given week?
So right now our water list, because there were 140 trees planted, so we start out watering, just going through and watering them all. But as we go through that list, if the resident is watering the tree, then we skip it. And as that goes on, I can remove trees from the water list as I see the residents are regularly watering the trees. So I believe right now the list is at about 100.
And it started at 140 something, right?
Yes, yes. So it's about 100. That's going down every week, every time we water. Well, actually, every time I go out and inspect. So every week I go through one of the areas just to check and make sure the trees are doing okay, and that if they're being watered, I can take them off the water list. So
It seems like so a lot of the residents do not water their tree, Brenda tree?
it's not so much that they don't water. Some residents have irrigation, but it's just not enough for the new trees. And I've really noticed the difference in a brand new tree that's watered properly, given a good amount of water every week, as opposed to just letting the.
And you tell the resident this, right? That what you're telling me, right?
Yeah, they get a letter with the planting confirmation, explaining how to care for the tree. And like I said, a lot of people do water, but sometimes it's just not enough.
Not enough. All right.
Yeah, so.
But the letter that you give them tells them how much to water the tree.
Yes, yeah.
And then, so you only water the ones that aren't getting enough watering, right?
Yeah. If the resident has watered the tree, and like I said, every time we go through this list, we are able to take more and more trees off the planting list, and then it'll. Yeah, right now I believe it's, but that's also including park trees, which there's with the memorial and the ones we planted, there's about 20 park trees that need to be watered. Yeah, so it's really 80. And then some of those are school trees also, so school site trees. Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Sorry, Mary.
Sure.
Of the
Oh, I'm
19
sorry.
trees that were either dead or high risk, were there any common themes? Are there any trees that you're over that particular species and you think when they die out, you're ready to move on to something else? I mean, I know we've had this moment where we're like, this is a bad tree for our environment.
Oh, yes, it's constantly changing. Even trees that were planted, well, I'm going to give an example, of one tree is an African sumac tree. There's a few of them in Rossmoor, not many. But 15 years ago, that was considered a really great tree because it's drought tolerant, it's evergreen, it's fast growing. The maintenance on that tree is just too much. It grows too fast, it hangs too low. So that's now been taken off the list of recommended street trees, even though it started out as something that everyone thought was going to be a really great park or street tree.
Back in the day, they were planting Brazilian peppers, which were god-awful.
Yes, yeah, and we still have a lot of them especially in Rossmoor Park.
But you've taken the California sycamore off the list because of the borer.
Yeah, the California sycamore, mainly just that and the size and the amount of water they need, and yeah, because they're not drought tolerant trees, really.
The California laurel is still not on your list, right?
No.
But it's March.
Are you an amateur arborist?
Yes.
And promoter of California native plants.
Yeah. Okay, any more questions, or, okay. All right, thank you so much.
Several pieces in the medical journals on the medical advantages of the California laurel. That's where you get bay leaves from. So there you go.
Good to know.
You can look that up.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, the monthly traffic safety update, and again, Joe, if you can summarize, that would be great.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the hot item on the traffic safety update is the meeting coming up with the traffic committee. I'm setting a date. I will be notifying our board members of that date when we pick a date to meet. I've been meeting with Kevin, and Kevin has indicated that he would like to meet and discuss the draft ordinance. He has given me a number of rough draft ordinances or draft ordinances from other agencies. I will be presenting them to Tarquin after I review them and try to make sense of what would work for us and give Tarquin a chance to amend them and discuss it with the traffic committee, then ultimately back here to the board sometime in June, at our June meeting. So we're looking forward to that. It's a start. and we understand the problem and we want to fix it. Okay, that concludes my report.
Moving on to the street sweeping update.
Street, you know, we met with Captain Knutson and a couple of our board members, Director Ciros and DeMarco last night, and their commander, and we discussed the street sweeping ordinance, signage, and we're looking at a layout of a phase plan, and I'm working with Public Works right now. I have a phone call into their director to meet with him and decide on a phased approach to the signage and the enforcement. We're not going to go from A to Z. We're going to try to take baby steps and see what works. Right now, we haven't been ticketing since January, except for a certain area that's signed, and things seem to be working. I don't think it's out of control. It's pretty normal, the amount of cars that are, I guess, illegally parked, and I would say that even if the sign or if there's a ticket involved, it's probably going to be about the same number. It's there's always going to be somebody that forgets or that just ignores the parking ordinance. But we will roll it out, and we will roll it out safely, and we will roll it out with some type of plan so we do not have sign blight all at once. So thank you.
Hi, George Lynn.
Thank you, George Lynn.
Thank you.
So that concludes my report. I believe if Directors DeMarco or Ciros has any comments, I think I covered it all.
The street sweeping is 9 to 4:30? Is that,
8.
those are the hours? 8?
8.
8 to 4:30. Yeah, because they actually came at our, on our street at just before 8:30. I'd never seen them that early before. But
And isn't it right, Joe, it doesn't take them 8 hours? It just, that's the window, their window that they can come. It typically takes 5 hours to sweep Rossmoor?
4 to 5 hours.
4 or 5 hours.
Two vehicles. During certain times of the year, there's probably 3 or 4.
great. Anything else?
No, we had a good meeting.
Great. On to the consent calendar. Anybody want to remove any items?
Yes, 3, please.
On 3, it's clear that we, it's not going to pass tonight on a vote. So I would just, unless there's other comments, I think we just move to table it.
If you table it and you don't pass it, then
Then it dies. But I can count as well as you can.
okay.
And it will be a 2-2 vote, so,
I assume
I
you're
think,
not changing your vote, Tony?
No.
Okay,
So
that's
I
fine. For formalities, I
I
mean,
think
to
we
say,
just table it indefinitely.
Fine.
So 1 and 2, do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So
So,
moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries 4-0. Public hearings, we have none. Resolutions, G1, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Services District approving the annual appropriations limit. Joe?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is coming before you tonight. It's an annual recommendation that the Rossmoor Community Services District Board of Directors approve by roll call vote Resolution 2205-1002 by reading the title only and waiving further reading as follows. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Services District approving and adopting annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 2022-2023. And attached is the resolution and also the appropriation schedule, attachment A.
Any discussion? Anybody care to make a motion?
Sure, I move that we adopt a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Rossmoor Community Services District approving and adopting the annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 2022-2023.
And reading the title only and waiving
And reading the title only and waiving
further reading.
further.
Second.
We need to write that down.
Roll call.
Barkey, seconded.
Director Barkey?
Aye.
Director Ciros?
Aye.
Director DeMarco,
Aye.
and Vice President Nickman.
Aye.
Passes 4-0 with 1 absent.
Next is, ordinances, regular calendar, report of the Budget Committee regarding, report of the Budget Committee. Joe?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is our annual preliminary budget hearing. We have met with the Budget Committee, and that is comprised of Directors Nickman and Rips, and we've discussed this in length. And tonight, we're recommending that this board receives the report of the RCSD Budget Committee, reviews 21-22 estimates to close, and provide direction regarding the formulation of the 22-23 proposed budget, and set the date for the public hearing for June 14th, 2022. Let me clarify that. If we set that date for June 14th, that will be noticed in the paper, and it'll be noticed, of course, on our website to the public. Under our bylaws, the budget adoption, we have some flex time in here. I just want to point this out. This is something that I tried to do a couple years ago, and I'm adamant of trying to continue this effort to pass a budget by July 1st. We've been passing it by September 1st, and it just plays havoc on our budget. And so my attempt this year was to move the budget calendar up and to get it approved in June and finalized in July so we can start out on July 1st with a budget. So to clarify and to make sure the board understands, we can adopt the budget on or before September 1st. That's what our bylaws read. So we have some fluff in there if we needed more time. Because I know our president isn't here tonight, and it might not work out that, we are going to be able to pass one by July 1st like I wanted. But you do have some flexibility, and I have put that up in the dais so you can understand that. So, background, I just went through the background. The budget within your packet, your original packet that was sent to you, was based on a 4% salary increase for our staff. After discussion with the Budget Committee and based on the CPI that was reported, I think it's 8.5 or something like that, and I also put a news release out on that on your dais. The Budget Committee felt it was appropriate to give the staff a 7% increase this year, and also after looking at some salary surveys, we pinpointed Mary as being very underpaid, and based on the going rate through California for an arborist. And we decided to recommend a $4 increase for her an hour, which would place her...
What percent is that?
I don't know what the percent is, but what that would do, that would place her probably at the low end of an arborist throughout California in the range of a salary. But it would bring her in to more of a competitive...
This is independent of the 7% that the budget committee...
She would not be getting a 7%.
She'd be getting this in lieu of the 7%.
Yeah.
It would
Got
be
it.
more than the
About
7%.
16%.
16%. Okay.
So therefore...
$4 an hour, yeah.
Tonight, you also have the budget that I provided that also shows the 7% and what the cost difference is. So you have it with you both ways. I have Ken Poon on the line who could walk us through some of this because you probably want to hear a little bit about our estimates to close and some of our recommendations as far as our expenditures and revenues that we decided on. Ken and I worked hand in hand in coming up with those formulas.
Who's on the budget committee?
Myself and President
President
Rips.
Rips. And,
Okay.
okay.
So,
Can we,
I'm sorry, Joe, but,
before we go into,
Yep.
with Poon, can we just, can we hear from Mark to understand why 7%?
Okay, very simple. It's a cost of living adjustment. And if we have, my understanding is in the past, we have given cost of living adjustments based on what the increase in the CPI is. The CPI increased last year 7%. You typically give it in arrears, so in fact, if you know, the CPI month over month, as I'm sure you know, I'm not telling you anything new, would be 8% or more based on what that is, but
Why only 7%?
because that was the annual CPI for last year.
Got it.
Generally, when you budget, you look at the previous year and say what it was, and we won't have the figure of like June to June. So it was 7% last year. We thought the 4% was just arbitrary. There was no basis for 4% other than that's an increase we feel like giving. And also that the staff have worked hard in the previous year. And that, you know, if we were going to keep faith with them, we ought to, A, give a, you know, a number that is based in an actual statistic rather than just random, and second, that that would roughly keep them up with at least a year ago's inflation.
Sure. So
So that's where the 7% came from. Now, remember, it wouldn't apply to 3 of the staff. It would not apply to the arborist because we're giving her an additional
16%.
range. And then there are 2 vacant positions. We're not giving cost of living increases to the vacant positions. Joe is out there looking for people, and so we asked him to budget the position there at the top of the range that we're asking for, so he doesn't have to go back if he hires a you know, particularly talented people, but we don't expect him to hire at the top of the range.
And so how do you take into account, though, that we may or may not have an adequate enough money coming into RCSD to sustain the raises that you're requesting?
Well, I don't think that's a true statement.
I'm asking, I don't know. I'm
Okay,
asking.
so, well,
Do we have 7% or more increases in the revenues coming in?
for this next year, no. We have a rather large fund balance, but year to year, and looking at these numbers now, and I just got them when you got them, I think Joe needs to go back and sharpen his pencil a bit on other items, because I don't want to be showing he is showing that with this 7%, we're 8,000 in the red, for year to year, not including the fund balance. So I would like to sharpen the pencils, but I think if we're going to take cuts, they shouldn't be from the cost of living increase.
No, I understand. I mean, listen, I'm not a budget guy, but I run a small business. We've got 12 or 15 employees, and so every year we need to decide what the salary ranges are and raises, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's smaller frame. And I'd love to be able to keep people up with inflation year to year. I mean, I know, I just filled up my tank coming over here tonight.
Well,
It's
and-
really expensive. But the question is, can we afford that?
Well, you don't do it just because you're a nice guy. You do it because you want to retain the people you've got and attract.
Is there any evidence that we're not going to retain if the raise is 4% or 5% or something less than 7?
The problem with that is, no, we won't know that until they give notices.
And
no.
we've had situations where some of our employees are looking elsewhere, and we look at their salaries and we make some adjustments as we need to, as opposed to just a blanket 7% raise. I mean, I'm not giving a 7% raise in my business, even though I'd love to be able to, but you got to look at what are the revenues coming in, what are the costs to the business. It's now almost impossible to buy fertilizer, for example, and all the other supplies that we use to take care of the trees and parks and all the things we do, and that has to be taken into account, not just the CPI, which is but one number. And I realize we use it, but there's others. I think the CPI is crazy. Inflation is going to be much higher than 7%. We're not going to be able to keep up with that.
I agree with you. I think the CPI understates actual inflation. But So, yeah, we could pick a different number. In my view, though, I don't have a basis for any number other than 7%. And so, if we're giving them a cost of,
That's the and I'm fine with 7%. You can use that number as a number we can shoot for to want to help out our employees, and I'm with you, because it's a number, it's objective somewhat. But what about the expense side to the district, and can we afford it? And all the costs that are going up, electricity and
Just moving forward, can we afford it every single year? So, I got a couple questions. So this was, you relied just on the CPI number, this right here. Not any,
this one, this is showing consumer price index for March, which, as I said, is much higher.
all right, but, so, so this is like I was kind of shocked that it was so high. This is, to me, like unprecedented. We've never given such a high, adjustment.
I guess we'd have to go back and look at what we were doing in the
Well, I've been here since
1980s.
13, well, I understand, I don't know.
We
going
haven't
back
had
then.
inflation this high until,
So if we have,
year.
so are we setting a precedent? So if next year it's 8 or 9 or 10%, that we're gonna follow that too? So how, I guess, what was the deliberation with you and President Rips? And, did you say exactly, you look at the CPI and we wanna, the employees are doing a good job and, we're solely basing this, the CPI is this number and this is a good number? Or was there any other reports that you drew off of, any analysis, on the impacts to RCSD? Any other studies that we looked at?
Other studies, I'm not sure what you mean.
I don't know, we're giving a blanket increase to everyone and it's not on merit, it's just on CPI. So,
We're not giving any merit increases except for merit.
understood, yeah, and then we're given like this blanket, increase.
Yeah, COLA.
And, again,
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have history, and I guess whatever we do, we're setting a precedent for next year, because we will have inflation next year, no question about it, until, they,
did you look at general managers? What about general managers?
no, he's
Any-
not in the COLA number. He is excluded from this as well. That number is separately goes before the board. We did give him a raise that was, as I recall, quite a bit more than 7% last year, but, was that last year or the year before?
Last year.
Last year. So, I don't, as I said, it was basically one, there was no other alternative number to draw on to come up with a different number that was not arbitrary. And second, it seemed consistent with what we had done in the past, which is we went by, we have done CPI adjustments in the past. The only difference is the CPI was much higher. Now, I don't know, Joe did not give us what comparable local agencies are doing. Comparable local agencies, of course, are paying their employees, generally speaking, a lot more if you include salaries and benefits.
And I would say, how are those agencies funded? Because we're funded very limited on property taxes. And again, I don't know what our increase is gonna be for this year, nor do I have a crystal ball in the future, the next few years, if we're going towards a recession or a downturn to where, because we can never grab this back. So, just in the last 9 years, from memory, I know this board has used the COLA as an indicator or a number, but it's typically, 2 or 3%.
Right.
And some years it's nothing, or it's a very low amount.
Can I just ask if I'm misreading this? So the administrative assistant is currently making $26 an hour, and it suggests that that person would make $4 more an hour. That raise is roughly it's well above 7%.
Now, the AA position is one that is currently vacant. And as I said, that's the top range of what you're currently looking for somebody between 24 and 30, 26 and 30?
26 and 30.
Okay.
26 and 30. So we put it at the high range for budgetary purposes.
Okay, so I guess my clarification would be, so that's the same for the account clerk?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's not a real increase.
Well, but the point is this chart then is completely unhelpful, if that's the way it's put.
I don't disagree with you on that.
Okay, well, I mean, as it's sitting here before
Yeah.
me and anyone else who's looking at it,
Yeah.
there's nothing that says these are vacant positions, and hence throw out the old number, and the new number doesn't have a relationship to the old number and 7%.
Correct.
Okay,
There should.
okay. 'Cause-
That should really
because-
say NA as well, because it's apples and oranges.
Right. So, I mean, ultimately, you're looking at a $25,000 increase in salaries. My question is.
Annual increase?
Annual increase. So if we take the 489 at the bottom to the 515. And we're looking at, proposed $55,000 increase in our property taxes. And that's really the only thing I feel like we have a solid kind of guess on the number. I mean, it's
And-
within that range. My question is, in addition to the 25,000 in salary, what are the other costs? The Social Security, insurance, other taxes? I see that we still have $10,000 in overtime accounted for. I mean, those are the things that, I think we all agree, they keep adding up, and we can't add revenues. I mean, we're stuck with the revenues.
Well,
And our expenses are going up.
at the margins, I mean, we can't do anything about the property tax, except we're investigating why. I don't see this chart. Do you have the property tax chart here somewhere? I thought-
Yes.
Huh?
Yes. I've been asked by Josh back there to ask you to please all speak into the mic a little more.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, because we had some questions about the property taxes, why they suddenly took a dip a couple years ago, and the amount that we were getting went down. Where do you have that, Joe? I don't see that here.
It's in your report on page 45 in your packet.
Oh, it's not in this,
No.
okay.
No.
Yeah, here it is. So we were going along at 1.7 million, then it dipped in 1920 to 1.6, dipped again in 2021, and was about the same in 21-22. And Joe has calls in to try and figure out why we suddenly got less in property taxes when everybody is, fixing up their home or selling it, and we should,
That's a great question.
our numbers should have gone up. Maybe they changed the formula when we weren't looking, and they just forgot to tell us, the same way the school district forgot to tell us. So Joe is researching that. That number shouldn't be going down. But, and as I understand, Joe, next month on the agenda, you were gonna have the fee question and adjustments in the fees.
Yes.
So that is a number we can control. There are other things that we can control. We can certainly control expenses better, as we did a couple years ago. But as Nathan pointed out, we're talking about, the difference between 4% and 7% wasn't a significant part of our budget. It's actually less than, the 7% is like 25,000, but it's not even that much because of the account clerk and the admin
But
assistant.
potentially it will, and it's going to be, I would think, to what Director Searles is mentioning, is what is all the residual costs in that payroll as well? So what is all the matching and,
Joe, do you have those numbers? I mean,
No, I
it's
don't.
not going to affect the 401K, it's not going to affect,
Not going to affect the
what
401K.
about taxes?
It's not going to affect the medical or dental because it's pretty comparable to what we've been doing. Taxes, I couldn't answer that.
well, it'll go up by the same, I mean, Social Security taxes
Right.
It's a
State
percentage.
fund.
would be, they would go
Right.
relatively in lockstep. The additional 3% would mean we'd pay an additional 3% in the employer's share of Social Security, whatever that was.
Joe, you'd mentioned that you presented to the Budget Committee a recommendation of 4%. Where did you come up with that?
That was just a placeholder in a number that I grabbed in order to give you an idea where what impact it would have on our budget and what it would look like.
I see.
So it's within the discretion of the board. Does anybody,
Well, I just, and
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with 7%, just simply because there's too many unknowns. And in particular, in an inflationary period that we're in right now, I like the idea of trying to be able to keep our employees caught up with inflation, but not at the detriment of the district. And so all our expenses are going up because that's inflation. Everything we do for this community is going up in price. And our revenue isn't necessarily going up. We don't get a COLA from the county to increase the amount of revenue they give us. And so I just worry we're going to end up getting ourselves in trouble by trying to be so generous and keeping up with the consumer price index. Another option, and Mark, did you discuss this at all, would be to give a smaller raise, and if we want to, we could give a one-time dollar bonus to the employees to help them, but then that doesn't go on the salary schedule.
no, that was not discussed. The question was the cost of living, but increase. Yes, you could give bonuses or just one-time numbers, and they would be outside the salary base. I certainly understand your concerns. I've been doing budgeting for a long time. As I said, I don't know what other districts are doing. But I mean, most of them are locked in with union contracts.
Yep.
And so they don't really have the discretion, but my guess is,
They don't. I can tell you, in those union contracts on the school board, it was a race to the top. And we used to do this. We'd look at all the salaries of all the other districts and what they settled on. And we had a goal of being in the middle to top third. And every district does that, and you start ratcheting up.
that's just ratcheting up.
And you
That's-
ratchet up to a point where all of a sudden, you don't have the reserves that you want, you have no upside, and it's just crazy. And the idea that if we don't pay at a certain rate, we're not gonna be able to find employees that will work, I'm not sure that that's accurate. And I don't wanna just ratchet up just to try to keep up with the consumer price index, although I'm certainly sensitive to employees struggling, especially ones that are making in the ballpark of what we're paying. It's really expensive now. In everything we do, go to the gas station to buy a loaf of bread, to buy milk, it's crazy, and it's not 7%. I would guess it's closer to 12 or 15% inflation, or possibly even higher. I mean, listen, 2 years ago, we were, paying $3.50 for a gallon of gas? I just filled up my truck. I couldn't even fill it up, because the darn thing stops at $200, and I can only put 30 gallons in, and it holds 35, or whatever it is, and, you don't have the ability to not put gas in your car.
But if inflation is increasing even more than 7%, which I agree with you, then a 7% CPI is a COLA is a reasonable move. I mean, it is.
Not
The
if we
thing
don't-
is,
not
it
if we don't have
is.
not if we don't have increased revenue. We're not a business. We're not raising our prices.
But we still have to compete for employees. And right now, this is a buyer's, a seller's market for
Right.
sellers of services. Right now, a lot of employers are going without people. So, if we lose any of these employees, we're gonna have to pay more. So why not, because because they're gonna, if they can get a better job, they're gonna do it. So why not pay the people here rather than having to rehire other people at more?
Because we can't afford it
But we can,
right now.
right? Yeah. I
I just heard you say something where we're gonna be in the negative based on the budget numbers.
the budget numbers that Joe has presented, we are a whopping $8,000 to the negative, out of a budget of $1.9 million. Now, I don't want to, I want our budget to be in the black, but I think there's other things we can do to cut to increase revenues and cut expenses without
How do we increase,
arbitrarily cutting COLAs.
fair enough, how do we increase revenue?
Well, as I said, one issue is the user fees, which are ridiculously low considering the cost of the services.
So we'll charge our residents more to use their taxpayer-funded services.
Yes, if you want to put it that way. I think that's a little bit tendentious, if you will.
Don't use such big words, I don't know what that means.
I think, let's put it this way, I think you're begging the question with your phrasing of it. We should charge people, users of services who use it more, we should charge them more than the general taxpayer. Because charging people for using tennis or pickleball courts rather than charging people who never use it is the right thing to do.
I understand, and we've had meetings about raising user fees. There's always been a little bit of pushback. At what level is too high? What level is it tolerant to the residents? And I don't know what the answer is.
Well, we're not recovering, I don't think there's anything on which we're recovering anything close to half
Of costs.
costs. If we were
And
getting
the-
above
and the
half,
question
I
is,
think you could have a
that's been a
reasonable-
long time question on this board, is that the motivation of this board, is to recover a percentage of cost, and what percentage of cost is that? So, most of our parks are used by our residents.
Right.
Their taxes are being paid to manage those parks, so how much, to your point, how much is recoverable? What's our threshold? And I think we've debated this for years. Is it 30%? Is it 50%? We've done studies on them, and we try to be, and the way to find out is you raise them too high and no one's in your park.
Which
Or
we
no-
haven't gotten,
Yeah.
haven't gotten close to
No,
yet.
but
Yeah.
we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we now have to do this because
No.
we've given our employees such a high raise that we're in the negative. Therefore, we really need now to make it up with user fees and so
We have a $1.3 million budget surplus, which increased by $266,000 last year. If we reduced that by $8,000 to make sure our employees, that we retained employees by giving reasonable COLAs, I don't think that would be the end of the
It
world.
won't, but it's in perpetuity.
No, it's not in perpetuity.
Yes, it is. The 7% increase, isn't it in perpetuity?
We have to pay our employees enough, as I said, we're not here just to do good for our employees. We're here to do good for our residents. That is our mission.
We are spending our money. That's what we're doing
Do you
as
have
a board.
evidence, though, Mark, that without a 7%, we may risk losing employees?
Do you have any evidence that with 4% we won't?
Well, right now, we're not. But there's no employees that are
We
saying,
have, we have 2 vacancies right now, 3, really, but we went back and,
each vacancy is for a different reason, not because you're not paying me enough, I'm leaving.
look, as I say, I think we should be concerned about retaining employees,
We should, I agree.
as I say, particularly in the current labor market. There are lots of opportunities out there.
Yes, there are.
In any event, and the difference what's the total difference between 4% and 7%?
I don't know.
That is going to crush
Well,
the
you just-
budget forever and ever.
Well, I think it's $13,000. $13,000.
That's,
But again, it's not based on, it's just based on, everyone that gets this flat,
okay.
entitlement.
It's 13,000 out of a $1.9 million budget. So if we're really concerned that this budget is too generous, we should be looking at a whole lot of other things. But if you want to come up with a arbitrary number that's less than 7%, present it, as a,
I don't think
Send
that
it
the
out there.
7% is just taking it, picking out of the government's COLA is, again, it's just based on this one stat. It's not based on just a, it's not based on, Joe, what's the, average administrative assistant? Are you having trouble filling it based on we're not paying enough? And what number should that be at? Not, we'll just give across the board increase. So, now if you hire anybody for maintenance rec assistant, most of these are part-time, right, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, so instead of, a minimum wage job or a $16, now it's 17 something. So that's our base now. And that's just a part-time job. So can you get someone at our rate now, or do you need do we need to increase?
Are you asking me? I don't know that. I know that it's in the realm of other agencies. Some are paying 14, some are paying 16, some are paying 17, some are paying 19. It's all relative, I guess, based on their ability to fund it, and as mentioned before, some of the benefits of the total package.
and we did look at ranges for all of these positions.
Yeah.
There is one position that's probably over range, which you can figure out by looking at the numbers. And everything else was very much in range or below range.
I also think we should hear from Jeffrey, because he's not here to articulate what his thinking was when you guys came up with the 7%.
This question, is there any way to pull this item and discuss it up out of the budget and still move the budget along so we get to your July meeting?
I don't think so.
Well, in a sense there is. I mean, this is just a preliminary number, so whether we tonight say we're leaning towards 4 or 7 or some number in between, we get another chance to look at it next month. Right?
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, Jeffrey's gonna be gone next month too.
Is that right?
But he's planning to attend
Well,
by
he's
phone.
hoping, well,
He's gonna comply with the Brown Act and will attend by phone.
okay.
I've talked to Tarquin about this, and I'd like to ask him to give you his opinion on what I guess the board's discretion is on a year-to-year basis with the CPI. And because I heard you say in perpetuity, but it's basically a year-to-year decision, and there isn't any precedence that would be set, and I will let Tarquin.
No, Joe, but you're not going to next year, if we give a 7% raise for argument and next year our budget is really tight, we're not going to give a reduction.
No, but you might not give it.
You might not give as high a COLA
Right,
the following
right,
year.
yeah. So, you want to talk about the,
Yeah, Honorable Board, if you have any questions, I'm happy to respond. Clearly, I think everyone knows there's no MOU, there's no union, these are at-will employees. There's no obligation to give them a COLA, cost of living adjustment, based on CPI or any other factor. Clearly, as General Manager Mendoza stated, if the board were to give one or more employees a COLA adjustment or raise, that would not be any type of legal precedent that would require the board to continue that next year. It's on a year-to-year basis. So
But the
beyond-
number is then built in, that's, I'm making.
Correct. I mean, if you give them a raise, if you give an employee a raise at, just for sake of argument, 7%, that pay rate is going to remain, that pay rate for that employee is going to remain at 7%, unless for some reason the board actually want to take the action to reduce that pay, but I've never seen that done and wouldn't recommend that.
We cut hours to effectively reduce pay
During COVID,
during COVID.
yeah.
So, I mean, if there's another emergency, there are options. We retain all those options. Now, some of them may be unpalatable.
Wait a minute, we cut out pay? District cut out pay during,
We cut hours,
We cut hours.
cut
Which-
hours?
which cut pay.
We didn't cut their pay scale, we just cut
We
the
didn't cut
number
their
of
pay
hours.
scale, just the number
Right.
of hours,
Yeah, that's
which-
right.
Potato.
So they made less, there wasn't
They
another.
made less money. Yes.
There wasn't other programs that assisted, they just made less money?
Well, they were supplemented by the state, yeah.
Okay, so they just weren't, we didn't,
We paid them less.
we paid them less, but there were other assistance that they received. So it's,
Right, but
okay.
we were talking about if we had another emergency and we had to cut budgets, we'd be stuck with these numbers, and I was, no, we wouldn't. Look, you said you'd like to hear Jeffrey's input on this. He was happy with the 4%, he was happy with the 7%. It was on my motion that we raised it to 7%. As I say, because I like to have a rational basis for my decisions, and I didn't see one at 4%. It was just pulled out of the air, and I've stated the reason. So, if there's a different number that a majority favor tonight,
What percentage increase do we expect our revenue to go up?
total revenues.
Total revenues
just
to
taxes?
our CSD that we then have to provide services to the residents
Now, in the past, we've been very conservative on that number
with our projections.
with our projection, and we're usually over that projection.
Yeah.
But the projection's usually 2. You know,
2%.
2, 3, and then maybe
3%.
we hit 4.
Okay.
Some years we hit 5.
Is there any expectation that there's something unusual where that's going to suddenly jump?
No.
Well, not based on historical figures, because we've actually gone down where I would imagine the assessed value in Rossmoor has gone up. I mean, I'm just guessing,
Sure.
right? But,
Prop 13, minimizes the amount of tax ultimately that is
Yeah,
increased.
I mean,
but not on a new purchase.
Right, not on a new
Yeah.
purchase.
we've had, 3 homes on my block sell
Yeah.
in the past 6 months, so.
But let's just assume for argument that next year we're going to get 4% more revenue to RCSD. Why would we give a raise above the amount of revenue that we're going to bring in? Granted, we've got a budget surplus, we've got a reserve, and we should have a reserve. The purpose of the reserve is for unforeseen financial emergencies. Some weird thing happens, like COVID, where we have to dip into our reserve or whatever. And so we can all agree on what that reserve should be, and we can adjust it. But to give a raise above and beyond what we expect the increase in revenue to RCSD doesn't seem responsible.
Well,
And if I-
that's because you're
just to mess
focusing
with
on
that-
percentages instead of numbers. The increase, a 4% increase in taxes is 4% on is 4% on $1.1 million, which is what, 40-something thousand dollars. The total increase we're talking about
For
employees.
the salaries is different.
Salaries is a fraction of that. It's like a third of that.
Fair enough.
So
Joe, how much,
cover.
Joe, how much in our budget is, in our revenue, is due to grants? You know,
About 90,000.
about 90,000?
Well, last year it was more than that.
Well, last year we budgeted, I believe, 155, or I forget.
Yeah.
But we're still in the process of recouping that money. We're in the
And
process.
is that part of the 1.9 million overall?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's included, okay, so,
The
that-
1.9 includes the fact that we got,
oh, government
estimate
agencies, yeah.
$350,000 from intergovernmental transfers, and the budget only includes 150 for that.
Well, you don't want to base salaries on grants, of course. So I
No,
get,
absolutely
so
not.
I guess another way to do this would be, what's the dollar amount increase we expect to get, n- subtracting grants and one-time money?
No, it should be based on tax, so what's
Tax
the
money.
dollar amount increase we expect to
And
get in
then-
taxes?
And then what is our best guess for inflation, meaning all the stuff that we do that's now going to cost more? So what's our, what's
To
the-
our expenses.
To our expenses.
Uh-huh.
And what's that delta as far as how much extra money now we're going to have coming in? And whatever that dollar amount is, then how would that translate percentage-wise into a salary increase for our employees? We certainly don't need to pack our reserves. I don't want to do that, but I want to maintain a healthy reserve. And I agree with you, Mark. I hadn't thought about that, but you're correct. You can't say we're getting 4% more, therefore we shouldn't give 4% more on the.
Should be dollar.
Yeah, because it should be dollar to dollar, but I don't know what that answer is to the question I just.
The problem is, as Tony pointed out, our projections on taxes we've generally been conservative.
Well,
But
pick a
if you
number
look at
that's-
that,
pick a number that's
Joe
different.
is projecting $55,000 increase in taxes.
Right.
Okay?
Okay,
So if our total budget goes up $55,000, we will be, and that depends on whether you use the estimates to close. I don't know why the estimates to close is so much lower than we budgeted. Joe, can,
you're on the first page.
I'm on the very first
Yeah,
page,
estimate.
you're showing projected 100,000 less in administration, and overall 250,000 less than was budgeted. Can you explain that for us? Because then we're going back up to 1.9 million for the current year. How did we save money in the last,
Because we've had some vacancies and.
the salary?
right.
Yeah, vacancies.
So we amended the budget mid-year to, for expenditures 61?
1981, yeah.
1981, but the estimate to close is 1746, and you're saying that's due, oh, let's see,
Not all salaries.
it's not all salary.
That's not all salary.
Rossmoor Park went down, everything's down.
Yeah.
So,
So, and now we're increasing it back up, so.
Part of that was we did not do the canopy this year.
the CIP,
So we're gonna be doing it next year.
It's budgeted though, right?
Well, but we're estimated to close it, we're not
Oh,
gonna.
Yeah,
you're
and-
saying we're moving it from
Right.
fiscal year?
Yes,
Right.
And next year it may actually be more expensive because of inflation.
might be,
all
yeah,
the,
might be, yeah.
Right.
so, Joe, when, and what I wanted to ask you, was Mr. Poon at your meeting? Mark?
No.
He was available, we didn't talk to him much.
He's online if he wanted to ask.
I want him in person. I'd like him in person. That's not available?
Not right now, no.
Okay.
So if our tax revenue is projected to go up by 55,000, let's just
Yeah,
round up to 60,000, and we assume 10% inflation to our expenses, what's that number? I don't mean,
Yeah, just so the question is the 1911950 account for that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Joe?
Say that one more time. Director
How
Barkey?
did you come up with the current numbers, the proposed numbers for the budget compared to the current numbers for the budget? Did you put in any inflation factor between, in the proposed budget?
No. No, we based it on what we thought we would incrementally spend and what the projects we were gonna do. And and based on past expenditures on water, parkway trees, that type of thing.
So but it was a straight line.
For example, one of the items is the Rossmoor Park janitorial supplies was 6,000 last year. It's set for 6,000 again next.
Yeah.
So no, there was no inflation.
Okay. But you're not asking for increases in there.
No.
And again, so the concern, it's not so much the labor, because that's what we're discussing. It's really the fuel and then the hard cost for things we are going to buy that's going to cost more. And again, I wouldn't know, I mean, you would have to do a line item to if you just go back, say, average last couple of years, but even the last couple of years, we're down. We're getting back into the,
Well, yeah,
you know, it's almost like 2019. What did everything cost, like hard costs for things we buy, okay, hard goods that we buy, right? So if you just assume the CPI is 7-8%, okay, it's probably going to be higher than that for hard goods, okay? What portion of the 1,911,950 can you attribute that increase to? Because I'm sure it's not it's not the entire 1.9 million. It's pieces of each department, right? And that's the tough part. But that's in my opinion, that is the reconciliation for this board to consider before we just arbitrarily give a raise based on just a CPI. I mean, we got to be able to substantiate this to our resident holders of, you know, to where, hey, you guys just did this, and so how did you come up with, oh, we just took the CPI. So
Then we shouldn't call it a COLA. If we're not giving them a cost of living adjustment based on how much the cost of living increased, then we can just do away with it and just say we're raising your salary X dollars or what X percentage, and
maybe it is based on another formula that we see.
But I mean, you've raised a more serious question, because if there's nothing built into the budget for any, you know, inflationary items, and then Joe's going to be coming back to us in January saying we've run out of money, guys, and that doesn't work. Now, a lot of it can be, you know, I think handled by, you know, readjustments and things like that, but I think Joe needs to go back and take another look at that.
Well, I think that's what mid-year is all about, and we've done that for the last 3 years. We made those adjustments at mid-year, and
But we don't want to be faced with a 10% increase, a $100,000 or $200,000 increase.
But Joe, and Joe, so Joe, guesstimate, and you can get back to us on this, but I bet you kind of know this. This quarter, what is your fuel cost compared to last first quarter? Guess, is it?
about 25% increase, yeah.
Okay, it's about a 20. And, okay, so now put it in a number. What do you think the RCSD's fuel cost is for a quarter? I mean, your guess is much better than mine. What do you think we pay for fuel? If you put a 20%, you know,
I would say probably for a quarter, probably $4,000, $5,000.
Okay. You know, okay. It's $800, right?
And we've got a CPA that works with the district. Shouldn't he be weighing in to help us analyze these numbers?
I mean, he could weigh in by Zoom. We didn't think his contributions were all that illuminating on budgetary issues. We do have budgetary increases by both our attorney and what was the other, that's in this budget as well, right, those numbers?
Yeah, Tarquin, I believe, asked for an increase, and it was, I think I added another $5,000 based on the increase he requested because it was on a sliding scale for the next couple of years.
Right,
And Joe,
he has, his number hasn't gone up in several years.
Right.
And Joe, I understand what your 4%, I understand it, the CPI is very high, okay? From memory, I don't think we've ever even given a 4%, okay, to memory. It's always been in the 3s or the 2s, okay? So I get, and the way you've done it in the past is you're looking at the past years, and the past 2 years have been crazy, right? So you're using all your historical knowledge on this very small district, okay, that is very small compared to other districts and other cities and counties you've done. And that's why your 4%, again, was it just a placeholder, or are you?
The placeholder, and it was a good guess as to what was fair, and also what would keep us in the black.
Okay, and then you also, which I appreciate, you identified I don't know, what do you want to call it, a line item in this report as this needs a bump up, okay? Based on your knowledge and your knowledge of other arborists and stuff like that. So you recommended, again, the bump. Again, in my opinion, we should be doing it that way. And I'm just not comfortable with just this.
There was a good question that was brought up, and I think that's puts it on the general manager's shoulders as far as what would you do if inflation continued, right? I think Director Searles and Director Barkey mentioned that. You adjust. That's my job to say, okay, guys, we're going to freeze overtime. We're going to adjust. We're going to maybe cut back here and cut back there, and we're going to not drive as much. We're going to make those adjustments, and then we might have to come back to you at mid-year and say, I need an extra $4,000 or something, or in this area. We did that with trees. It's an unknown. The trees. We started having these large events, and I immediately went to the trees out there and said, hey, we don't want one of these branches falling on one of our patrons. We're going to have thousands of people out here all summer. Spend the extra money. It's worth the liability.
Right. I mean, listen, here's what I'd like, here's the information I would like to justify a raise. What is the estimate, best guess estimate of how much increase in tax revenue we're going to have? I heard 55,000, whatever that number is. What's the best guess? And what is the expected increase in expenses, hard cost expenses, that the district is going to incur? Pick some number, inflationary number, it's going to be above 7%. But what's the expected increase number of expenses that we're going to incur over the next year? Fuel costs, fertilizer costs, repair costs, whatever other hard costs that we buy. So we need to be able to justify that our expenses are going to go up, but we'll have money to cover it because our tax revenue is going to go up. And if there's a delta between our increase in expenses and our tax revenue, then that's the money really that's available for us to give out to our employees as a raise. And then once we figure out what that delta is, whatever that number is, then we can figure out how much of a raise we can give. But to pick an arbitrary CPI number and just say we're going to give that.
I completely understand what you're asking, but again, you're using a term that says best guess. We don't know when inflation is going to stop. We didn't know when COVID was going to stop. We don't know.
No, I understand. So,
But we're doing that right now, Joe. We're basing a number on what the increase is. So, I don't know. Your best guess. We don't know. Is inflation going to be the same rate in December? Is it? I don't know.
I don't know. Pick a number.
This is your best guess,
Pick
Joe,
15,
for
pick
what?
15%.
you're projecting that you can carry out all the functions that we do without a year-to-year increase, basically, in expenditures. And not sure how that's going to happen, but that's what you're saying your best estimate is. So, I mean, he's given us his number. We had an amended budget of 1.981. He thinks he can do it next year for 1.911, which is 70,000 less than last year amended budget. If he can do that, God bless him. We don't want to, I mean, but I'd like you to sharpen your pencil, and I'd like you to look at numbers, because you're, for example, straight lining gasoline costs from last year, and that, I agree, that doesn't sound realistic unless you just curtail driving.
But we're driving and watering 100 trees, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, that takes a lot of fuel.
Right.
Water is going up too.
Yeah, well, all utilities, I would say, are going to have some adjustment.
But this is, it's not, we're not balancing the budget on the backs of the employees. But I can completely understand your concern. It's just that the amount we're talking about there is a very small amount of the budget we need. If we're looking at all the items, then there's lots of room for Joe to be able to adjust an increase of $13,000 out of a $1.9 million budget.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure you do that as a private employer.
Okay, so right now, where the information in front of me, and again, just utilizing a CPI, not what Director Barkey has asked for. I'm less comfortable at a 7. I'm more comfortable at a 4 right now, until someone can show me that we're not going to take a hit, because you know, me personally, I would think I'm going to need to explain that my action of giving this large of an increase, which is we've never done. Again, we've never had this inflation, but we've never done it. So I want a more thorough explanation as to, and again, I think Director Barkey just mentioned it. Can we have this, you know, the estimate, increased tax revenue, expected hard cost expenses due to inflation? Just take another look, and this is what I'm thinking it's going to be. And does the 7% make sense?
I think we have done what our general manager asked, which is we have provided direction regarding the formulation of the budget, and we've reviewed the reports. In terms of the estimates to close, I'm not sure I understand why they're so far off.
Yeah, that's another good question.
But then all we need to do is set the date of the public hearing for June 14th. I don't think we need a motion to do that, do we?
I would recommend a motion.
So, Tony, are you making a motion then to use 4% instead of 7?
But what will, that's just to amend the current budget moving forward, because this is a document that we're sharing and still discussing, right? This isn't the final budget.
This is the final budget as proposed by staff,
Okay.
but it's not final until the board approves it and makes any amendments to it.
Here's, if I were going to try and make a motion, it would be this. Without taking a stand on the final numbers, we'd like the general manager to go back and one, look at the numbers and see, all the numbers, and see if they're realistic on the expense side in light of the inflation the country has suffered and is likely to continue to suffer for the near term. and also see if he can find, documentation or support for what are appropriate numbers beyond best guesses for all the expenditure numbers, including the salaries, and to report back next month with a revised budget that incorporates, some additional information and pencil sharpening. Because I think we have a consensus that this numbers we need more information to approve any numbers.
I would, an addendum to that would be that, Joe, I understand from the initial pretty much statement was, with respect to the arborist, you've already done a field survey of salaries. That was grossly undercompensated. That's essentially, this proposal is to put that in a comparable position.
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't say grossly, but
it's
clearly understated.
Okay, well, and it also is looking at our organizational chart, that in a horizontal viewpoint, that this position was being compensated at a lower tier.
Right. She was
So-
making less than the recreation superintendent and much less than the park superintendent, who has been with us a long time. And
roughly making the same as a general clerk.
yeah, despite, having additional education
Right.
and
So-
experience.
So my point to the addendum is that I don't know that we need to have that number revisited. If you guys feel that that's different, then we should address it now, so he doesn't come back in a month and say.
This is
I
Mary's
didn't
number,
look
you
at
mean?
Mary's number.
Yeah, and likewise, the AA and the account clerk were previously discussed by the board, and they're not getting this, either a 4% or a 7%.
Okay, so wait a minute. So the AA
The AC,
and the AC and the arborist
yeah, and the DA, yeah.
are all 4, they're getting a 4 increase. Okay.
But with Mary, it's real, and with the others, it's TBD.
Okay. Well, okay. But that's the number he's going to start at for
No, that's,
the fill, the
no,
position.
he is looking for a salary of between 26 and 30. That's what he's advertised, a range
the
of
range.
26 to 30.
Okay.
So rather than, we could have, a lot of government agencies would have just said, let's put in the 26, because that's the minimum.
Yeah.
But we,
That's what I initially did.
We
yes.
put in the 30,
we put in the 30. And-
expecting it'll be somewhat 30 minus.
Yes, yeah, and that was Director Rip's suggestion, is let's put in the top, so we don't have any unpleasant surprises. We'll only have good surprises, hopefully, which made sense to us. So, and hopefully you'll have hired somebody by next month, right?
Hope.
Huh? Where are you on the hiring process right now?
I have a few applications. I've just posted in a couple other areas, jobs available and things like that, so I would hope to
No
set up some
interviews
interviews.
set up yet?
Yes. No, not yet.
So that's your proposed, and then, so that was a long paragraph, so I just want to just add, like Director Searles, I think I would like a motion with, maybe we don't end up with this, but in the actual document, the recommended from our general manager, 4%, not both in the document, because if we do choose the lower one, it's like we're taking something away. So I would, the original budget document that was sent out originally with the 4%, I would be in favor of keeping that as the document, as you point out, Director Nittman, getting more information and then making our final decision on the actual salary.
Well, I think my motion, well, I didn't hear a second on it, so are you proposing, I guess it was informal, so are you making a motion?
I like everything, sure. Again, you help me reiterate what you said, because everything, it was long, and I didn't write all the notes down, but we need more information, okay, to make an informed decision moving forward on getting this inflation, what the perceived cost or the estimated cost of our expenses are going to be, and the estimate of what we feel our taxes are going to be increased. But the document moving forward, I would like to see at the original recommended 4% COLA.
Okay. Well, politics is the art of the possible. I studiously avoided in my motion saying that it would be 4% or 7%, again, because I can count votes, and it seems we're split 2-2 on that. So
Well, wait a minute, are we?
Are we? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm okay with 4%.
Are you?
I think that, I understand Tony's point of put the numbers down and let's see what we have.
And I'm not saying I'm voting for 4%. I
Right,
think our
exactly.
moving document,
I was going to put in both, but if you want, if there's a majority to just go with 4, then that's what we'll do.
I think it's for exploratory purposes, 4% is where I would start, rather than leaving it in a A or B already.
Okay. Okay, then that's what we'll do.
so,
Then your motion
Motion.
is, okay, so then let me try and restate the motion then. We want more information on how next year's budget is going to work given inflation expectations, and how you're going to make that work, or whether you need to do an adjustment now so we don't get an unpleasant surprise in January. And we're going to go with the 4% for now for cost of living increase for the, draft budget for June. And again, we want you to look at if there are numbers out there for, for COLAs, for what is being done, or what you think you can reasonably afford, that's 4% or 6% or 3% or 8% or whatever. We want to hear more support. That's not really a motion, that's a long speech. So let's try this. Come back with the budget after having looked at the numbers, all the detail more closely, and go with 4% numbers for employees.
for the salary plan.
For the salary
proposed salary
increase.
plan, yes.
And that's, proposed salary plan is only for current incumbents other than the one that we're increasing. Is that it? And a public hearing June 14th? Yep. On the budget.
I think if we would have, we got hung up on the salaries. I think if we, and it's getting late, and I understand that, but if we would have walked through some of these other areas, there, like I picked out, and it would have been explained, there was an expenditure in there of $70,000. That was the meal gap program. Of course,
Right.
it was also in revenue, so, there were some items in there that we don't expect
Yeah.
to have to do with
There
it.
were one-time revenues and one-time expenditures, and those balanced out.
But it still inflated our expenditures.
Yeah, but you spent much less than we anticipated, whereas your revenues were very close to what we anticipated. So something seems out of whack there.
Okay.
Because that Meals on Wheels, you should have, Meals on Wheels, you know, that seniors program should have had a corresponding revenue. So it should have been a zero difference. Is there a second on that?
On my motion that you articulated for
Yes.
me?
We get a
So-
roll call vote, please.
Oh, okay, roll call, okay.
Director Barkey,
Aye.
Director Searles,
Aye.
Director DeMarco,
Aye.
and Chair Nickman.
Aye, or President
4-0.
pro tem.
Okay. Pass 4-0 with one absence.
Okay.
Right. Down to the last item.
All right.
And you'll follow up on the tax issue, maybe
Yes.
if in the next month we can get clarification on that, that could help.
Yes, I'm waiting for an explanation, yes.
Yeah.
The next item is H2. I'm requesting that the board review and approve the agreement to operate a farmer's market here at Rush Park with Enrich Farms and Avante Harvest Incorporated. They're a California nonprofit corporation. We're looking to conduct a market here in our parking lot on Thursday evenings from 4 to 7. We picked that day because traditionally Thursdays, low impact on our room here, so we would book it out and put a hold on it and approve users as needed and based on how many people they had because of the parking and situation like that. So we would still conduct meetings in here on Thursdays, but it would be low impact. So we're asking you to approve this. There's a layout in the back. There's the agreement that we've passed through and discussed with Tarquin and with the Avante Farms. This company does have a number of farmers markets that we researched, and one is real local here at the church right here on Cerritos Avenue, Catella, at the Grace Church.
Yep.
And it's successful, and we're looking at starting up a week from Thursday because based on the schedule today, we can't start this Thursday
You have
because
a lot of vendors all lined up and everything?
they're all lined up.
It's going to be pretty much the same group that is at the one on Catella,
And this is, we make money on this?
No, it's a wash,
Revenue neutral?
right.
Okay.
and Tarquin negotiated a 30-day cancellation. They wanted a 90.
I wanted a 60.
Because they have upfront expenses to get permits and
Sure.
everything, which seemed reasonable. And we have a 30-day cancellation, so and we're going to keep, obviously, Joe's going to keep, close watch of neighbor issues, and you're going to
Right.
work with them, and you already have established a good relationship with them.
Yes.
So,
So it's a one-year agreement with a 30-day clause to term.
somebody want to make a motion on this?
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do you need a roll call on this for some reason? No?
On track.
What is Tarquin saying?
Tarquin, need a roll call?
No, roll call is not necessary.
Okay.
I think he said no.
No, not necessary.
Okay.
General Manager Mendoza and I were just conferring about the start date. The start date in the agreement itself says May 12th, but I understand from Joe Mendoza that it's going to be the following week,
Yeah, this
Oh, so it's not going to be May 12th, it's going to be May 19th?
Yeah, this Thursday's a little, I wanted to make sure we got it approved, so I've asked them to move back.
May
to
19th, and then it's every Thursday?
It's every Thursday.
Weekly?
Yes. We're looking, we lined up some free entertainment, a local band here that,
Nice, Joe.
So, and if they decide they're not making money on it,
They can cancel.
they can't, they don't have a 30-day cancel unless we're in default, right? They're stuck for a year. Is that correct?
For cancellation, no, I believe it's mutual cancellation.
it's a mutual 30 days.
District may at any time terminate this agreement for any reason or no reason by giving 30 days advance notice. Contractor may terminate if district materially breaches and fails to cure. Is there a mutual termination?
I'm reviewing the agreement itself. Hold on one second, please.
Unless, I mean, people can always agree, but I don't think they have a contractual right to terminate.
Right, they don't, we may
Right.
breach it for any time, for any reason, no cause, at least 30 days' notice for breach. The contractor may terminate the agreement if the district, A, materially breaches any of its covenants, yada, 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 and fails to cure such breach within 30 days, following written service of notice on the breach, intent to terminate, and demand to cure in default. So they can only terminate.
Right. So if they
Without consent.
aren't making money at it, and they don't show up, they're in default, but our only option is to terminate, right?
Right, I mean, we're not paying them any money, obviously.
Right.
They're not paying us money. We're just letting them use our space.
So as a practical matter, if it isn't working out, it isn't working out.
Correct.
General manager items?
Okay, so that motion passed, and
Yes.
general manager items, good news. Remember we used to host Shakespeare by the Sea here?
Yeah.
And last year, I used that inner-city Shakespeare company out of LA that I had a relationship with. They did it for free. The Shakespeare by the Sea came back to us, and as you remember, we were giving them a pretty good stipend to do it. They're willing to do it for free. They go out and get sponsorships like they should have, and they're going to be coming back in August, and I'll get you those dates.
Who is Shakespeare by the Sea? Or, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
awesome.
I like that deal better.
Yeah. Pickleball, we're working on plans in the next 2 weeks to buy some portable goals, tape 4 courts on the court 1 at Rossmoor Park, and we will let you know when we are going to do a trial run for about 5 or 6 days and listen to sound, talk to neighbors, and we will line up some pickleball players, and we'll make sure the tennis world knows about it also. And after that, we will probably have a stakeholder meeting, and, I'm waiting for our committee to meet to finalize the survey. We have a rough draft survey. I think it's 95% go, but I want the committee to meet one more time just to bless it, and we'll put it out in our newsletter and on our website. Upcoming events, this Saturday's the bulky item pickup, 9 to 1 p.m. We expect a lot of cars out here. We have, our staff's going to be here, and of course, CR&R will be, they've hired some extra staff to come in to help and make sure that it's done safely and under control. Local control residents satisfaction survey, I talked about that. Professional services agreement with your Pepe Smith and the audiovisual that the gentlemen back here are providing. The contract will be coming to the board in June. Right now, we're working on a month-to-month, but the contract will be starting in July. That contract will be coming to you, and it's in the budget. Black Mountain, all that's signed off, and we're scheduling the training and the program to begin sometime in the new fiscal year.
Joe, can I add to that?
Sure, please.
On the Black Mountain Agreement, if you recall at the last meeting, they did not want to defend and indemnify the district, and there were insurance issues. We've since, we did reinsert a provision for defense and indemnity, even though at the last board meeting, the board was grudgingly approving what they wanted. So we did make some modifications, but the defense indemnity in favor of the district is back in the agreement.
Oh, great.
Go ahead, Joe.
So that's all signed again, and they are scheduling training for our staff and for our contractor. And we're working hand in hand with Bray IT to do that implementation. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Anybody have questions?
Nope.
Okay. So board member items. Let's start with Dr. Barkey.
I'm good, thank you.
Nathan?
So I'd ask Joe for the purposes of the farmer's market, that we do a survey of the attendees and understand like whether they like what we're doing with it or not. If it's too much crafts and not enough food, if there's not enough space, if there's not enough parking. simple Survey Monkey with a QR code to residents, and maybe even put it out on social media or publicly for people who don't attend, but they can express why they didn't attend. Because, you know, if they didn't stop and see the QR code to know that, or the survey, to tell us why they wouldn't attend. And it might be parking. It might be they didn't like what they saw and they just don't want to fill it out. But I'd like to get some feedback on whether they like the farmer's market as they experience it. As we get started, it's best to come up with the kind of criteria that we're looking at that makes the residents happy with their farmer's market, rather than it just becoming a status that we're just stuck with and we're okay.
Is there a timeline that, I mean, you want to give it a month?
I mean, I think it'd be great to, yeah, as soon as they come, as soon as we can get people there and participating and say, what do you think? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it'd be great in a month to know what they thought of the first 3 weeks of the farmer's market.
Sure.
Looking at the budget, there's, I mean, I didn't want to go nitpicky after we spent a lot of time dealing with, what is more than, 25% of the budget, and that's important. I'm concerned about the government grants part of the budget, because we don't know what that is, and that number is still pretty sizable. And then I also noticed that our sponsorship number is pretty high, but it's not high enough to offset the increase in our community events costs from, those are going up about 21,000, and yet our sponsorships is only going up 11,000. So, and then being mindful of inflation, that our sponsors may not be able to offer what they could last year.
Yep.
So, I know the budget's going to come back to us, and we're going to look at it in detail and make sure we're all happy with it, but I think there's a lot of that's important. Yeah, and then there was just some capital expenditures at Rush Park that we didn't have anything in the original budget last year. We put in 40,000 and 49,000, and we still have another 50,000 going next year, just to understand where these come from. So I look forward to, President Rips and Vice President Nittickman being able to really express, all those details together. So I know, Mark, you carried a lot of water today. So thank you. Other than that, there's a RHA blood drive on next Wednesday, and again, the CHP bike safety event. I hope everyone will attend. And I believe that's all I have. So thank you.
Any follow-up on Weaver Elementary School and the solar?
Yes.
Great.
After talking to the school district, it was found that, they're mandated by the Department of State architect. They call it DSA. Mm-hmm. And they have to meet certain criteria when they do a project like this. They did do a 2-year notice in the Sun newspaper. They went, I believe, door to door in certain areas. They put it on their website. They did community meetings in Seal Beach, Rossmoor, Los Al, and 2 at Los Al and 2 at LAUSD. Basically, the committee asked, or the board asked, why they chose those sites. They felt that the solar awning in a parking lot would have been too close to homes, and they put it on sites on the playgrounds so they can create more shade. And yeah, either way, it would have been an impact in some type of line of sight that might not have been appealing to everybody, but they picked the one that they felt was going to be most beneficial, and that was to provide shade to the kids in the playground, or maybe picnic benches under them, things like that. They did do flyers to surrounding homes, and they felt that they went above and beyond what they were required to do.
Except coming to the governing board of
Yeah.
Rossmoor and talking to you or the board members.
They felt they put enough notice out there.
Was anybody aware?
None, no.
They held public hearings in community hearings?
Now, I don't know where, but they said they held one in
Maybe
Seal
at the
Beach,
school.
one in Rossmoor,
at
Two
3 in the
in
morning?
LaSalle.
Well,
I think it's astounding that all of us just missed all of these
there's
notices.
impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible.
If Rachel didn't know about it, nobody knew about it.
We didn't get noticed. If my wife didn't know about it, if Maureen didn't know
Well,
about
they
it.
said if you surrounded the school, yeah. So,
Joe, thanks for getting that information. All of the others, so Hopkinson, Rossmoor, and Lee, no, Lee doesn't, does Lee have one? But Rossmoor and Hopkinson, there's two of them, and they're set back much more, is different. But it just goes to people outside of Rossmoor changing Rossmoor. And, you know, and Joe put it very appropriately last night with the captain, we are treated like a stepchild, okay, by all kinds of agencies. And we have a local government here. So it just doesn't, it's not like we're unincorporated and we don't have a local government. We have a established, recognized, local elected government that they know about, yet someone chose not to, and you always got to ask the question, why did they chose not to, why didn't our representative from the school board, or any of them, and you know this was talked about over the last 2 or 3 years, or that they knew about it, polling permits and all that, why did none of that come up? We've had several meetings. Oh, by the way, hey, we're putting on solar, did you know about it? It's just beyond me. Okay, Joe, thanks for getting the information. Weaver Elementary is, in my opinion, very, very ugly and an eyesore. The other schools are less noticeable, okay? And again, whoever made that decision did a very bad job for our community. Let's see, we talked about the trash can lids. So, Joe, it's your understanding that starting from next month, we put all 3 cans out? And that,
that's my understanding. I can't, don't hang your head on that.
Yeah.
Because they're still rolling out, providing the lids. And I don't, you know, they promised this month. But you know.
it would be nice to know, hey, the truck's coming, it's full.
They told us they were going to send out individual notices
Yeah.
to the homeowners to put their trash cans
And
out.
remember, they were all here when they got the contract, a week before they signed the contract, and what did I tell them? You know, you're gonna be gone. And there's a county agency that's managing the contract.
Yep.
CR&R is managing the contract. We can't even get the information. When is the truck coming out full of lids? Which week, which day? Just send it to us so we can post it.
I have voiced this to our supervisor, in District 1, and I'll be following up with a letter. I talked to him today, not to him, but to his rep. I talked to him last week, letting him know what we're up against and how it feels. And I'll be sending them a letter to see if they can nudge and get some answers for us.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I did just send you, well, earlier, you had asked about that RHA response.
Yeah.
I sent it to you, okay?
Okay.
And it's based on what I said. They didn't want to cross-contaminate.
Joe, please follow up on the digging up of Ruthie
will.
Lane. And
Yeah, when we talked on the phone, I told him we need to be in person now because what you're telling me isn't cool.
it's starting Friday.
Yeah, I know.
Again, to Joe's point, we're treated like a stepchild. All right, and then lastly, speaking of the school board, I was over there today, and I want to congratulate my wife. She got High School Hero of the Heart for all of her 20 years of donating her time as our kids went through all of the schools, and she was awarded that, so I want to congratulate my wife, Rachel. And see, we love our school district here, and it'd be nice to some of them to return some of that love, you know, and just talk with us. So that's it. Thank you.
I don't even understand, I mean, even if they only did a neg deck, they're required to give notice to affected jurisdictions.
Yeah.
The schools are in our jurisdiction. We're an affected jurisdiction. I don't know how they managed to forget that.
I mean, I don't know.
But anyway, I didn't have much. The hour is late. You just reminded me of something, and then it went out of my head. Are these for here?
You can keep them or you can leave them. It's up to you.
Bring them back, Joe. Can you bring them
Up
back?
to you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. We're going to have a budget committee meeting set up to review your revised budget before the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, good. And, okay, so hopefully, see you all next month. Oh, that's right. I have no special items. Tarquin, do you have anything?
No, nothing, thank you.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank